We're doing good.
Do you want an honest answer to that, Curtis?
You're still working on your car?
Yeah, we're not going to discuss that.
Okay, Ron Delvaux calling in. Hey, Ron.
Let me know how... Sorry. I was going to say, I'm going to do a bit of typing here. Just let me know how loud it is. I put something under the mic that's hopefully going to muffle some of the noise. Let me know if it's still too loud, if I still have to mute it.
Go ahead. Oh, yeah.
You still hear it? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's very bassy, though, so it's probably your desk is resonating it.
Yeah, it's not like answering through that.
Yeah, I put a bit of padding under the mic stand, which is where it's reverberating. Like if I tap it, I'm sure you can hear that too, right?
Yep.
Yes, I can hear that too, yeah.
Same time.
I'll do that for the drum roll when Drencore comes on.
It's all about that bass.
All about that bass.
Yeah.
I've got visuals now.
So, yeah, it was a nice unexpected treat to have Steve Bjork join us as well, and somebody else who I have been speaking to, and he just did a test call with me a few minutes ago too, but his name is Edgar Valasco, and him and a friend of his, they run a handful of retro podcasts, and one of them I just started listening to. It's called the Retro VGM Revival, where they play video game music and talk about it, and each month it's a different theme. And it's a pretty good show, and he's been running his show for about 2 years now. So I figured since we're getting into the podcasting game, it'd be nice to maybe, form some alliances with some other retro podcasters out there. And so he's going to join us in a little bit, and we'll get to hear about him and some of his shows. I don't know if he'll stay for the whole show because he's not really, familiar with the CoCo or anything, but he's part of a nostalgia network. He's got his own little network of kind of nostalgia websites and stuff like that. So I thought it would kind of fit in. Hey, Ron, how are you?
Good. What's happening?
Not a lot, man. It's starting to turn into a show here.
Yeah.
Hey, Ron.
Yeah.
Did you install the SDC DOS 1.5 update?
Yes, I did.
Did it fix your issue?
I have a video to prove that it works.
Have you tried to break this one yet, David?
Ron's the one that found it, so don't look at me.
Steve, I was going to ask you, I saw the notice on Discord that they're going to be starting the video chat, and they're going to kind of roll it out gradually.
Yeah.
But it looks like there's a limit of 10 video users at a time if you have video enabled. Is that correct?
Well, we'll have to wait and see what happens about that. Maybe it only support 10 videos at a time, but we've had more than 10 people on a Discord voice chat before. So,
okay, I didn't know if it was going to allow you to mix. You're more familiar with Discord than
the video part's new, so it's to be determined.
Okay.
I could always turn my video, but I turned my video off because I was worried about your bandwidth.
No, that's fine. Bandwidth shouldn't be an issue, but
okay.
We're hoping to switch from Skype to a program called Discord at some point in time, and Discord is definitely a lot more bandwidth economic, and it's got a really good audio codec as well. It's very clean.
But we'll have to pay $50 a piece to be on it?
No, it's free.
No.
It's and not only is it free, but it's completely cross-platform, and so it runs on Linux and Mac and everything else. And unlike Skype, where Windows likes to kind of restrict features to non-Microsoft platforms, this is going to be feature consistent across all platforms. So
cool.
Yeah, and I've used it on iOS, Android, Linux, Mac, and Windows.
Yeah,
so,
and works great on mobile, whole 9 yards.
I'm still waiting for the CoCo native version, though.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So I don't know if you guys can see to my right here, but these little foam panels here, I just ordered some of these off of Amazon, and I don't have enough to cover my whole door, but they're kind of like the studio sound dampening, whatever the heck they are, foam panels.
Yep.
And so I've got
like 8-crate style?
Yeah, sort of, yeah. So I've got a handful of them up. I'm going to order some more. I figured we would try it. I want to try to, focus on things I can do to maybe make the audio a little bit cleaner from the get-go to minimize post-production time,
How did you attach those?
With some spray adhesive.
Aha.
Spray some on the wall, and then you spray some on the item.
No, we just did it on the foam itself and stuck it straight to the door.
Okay.
Actually took the door off and laid it down flat so we could do it on the floor and not have to worry about, holding things
Gravity.
up while we worked on it. Yeah, gravity and stuff. So
Years ago, I was in one studio, and every time I went to it, it just kept smelling worse and worse. And what they were doing was using A cartons as their dampeners. Well, somebody was grabbed the A cartoners from a restaurant, but they didn't seem to realize that the cook, when he would crack the eggs, would put the eggs back on the cardboard.
Right.
And you get that rotten egg smell after a while.
yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I had a friend of mine. He had a local band, and they had a practice thing in a trailer just outside of town. They did the same thing. They were grabbing for restaurants, and they did the same exact mistake. And then they started getting cleaning egg cartons once they figured out what was going on.
Very cool. Let me share sound with you guys real quick. I'm not sure if this is going to diminish the show in general, but I figure since Steve Bjork is here, he might like to hear this sound here. Which one is it now? It's 3 from the right.
We gotcha!
I got that in my soundboard.
Yes, single bit audio. God, I love it.
It sounds very retro appropriate. So
Now, was that your own voice, Steve?
No. That was Bob Bishop, who did the original version on the Apple.
Yeah,
Oh, the original Dung Beatles.
Yeah, with 1-bit sound.
1-bit sound. That's the way you did it back there. I'll be back in a moment, gentlemen.
okay, no problem. Barry Nelson has joined us.
Hey, Barry.
Hello.
Ooh,
Are you on a plane, a train, or an automobile today, Barry?
None of the above. I'm on my couch, and I just got a new internet connection upgrade.
Oh my God, you sound so clear, dude.
That's a huge improvement.
Yeah,
We're shocked.
yeah. We can now officially fire Drencor since we now have you in a clear audio. So
Up your station. You know
that's
where
so
you
awesome.
can stick that one.
Now, Steve, you need to be nice to David because, he might not give you first exclusives after he reveals some truths in some software. He might go to some other podcast.
Oh man.
So what's our topic for discussion today?
There isn't a specific topic, but we are going to talk about. Ron, we have segments now, right? So Ron Delvaux has segments. So we're going to this segment's going to be called Ron's Garage, and Ron actually prepared a video of fixing a printer cartridge and taking a dump from taking a dump. That's funny, right? So hold on. Here's Edgar. He took a down. We're not live just yet, Edgar, but welcome. I'll do a quick introduction to everybody who doesn't know you. Everybody who just joined us. This is Edgar Valasco, and he hosts one of his podcasts that I was mentioning to them earlier was your retro video game music revival hour. And welcome. We're just having our pre-game chat right now. So yeah, there's not an actual topic today, Barry, but we have a few segments. So Ron's Garage is one of those segments. We have the newbie question of the week. We have the tech talk. We're going to address some of the things. Something just came up in the mailing list with this person's circuit board design, so we'll probably talk about that. And our regular segments where we'll review whatever's happened in Facebook and review Tandy Assembly and whatever other spontaneous topics come up. But the next topic I'm hoping for is to show off the Cocoa Pi on the Raspberry Pi, but I really want to get Ron Klein here to really narrate that since it's kind of his project and I'm not going to do it any justice on my own, And that is tentative for next week with Ron Klein.
Oh, you get a hold of him again?
Yeah, we've been messaging back and forth, and he's just got some work schedule stuff.
Okay.
So the Cocoa Pi is running which? Is it running MES or is it running?
Yeah, it's running MAME. It's primarily running MAME for the Raspberry Pi that Ron Klein continues to optimize. The whole distro is optimized. There's no GUI. It's a hard-coded resolution of like 640 by 480 or something like that. So the whole thing is really tuned to run CoCo well, and it's menu-driven at the moment.
Okay.
You're breaking up a little bit there.
Now.
right. Who we doing? Edgar, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I hear you pretty well, yeah.
Okay.
Am I coming across well?
Yep. I think we're... Oh, shoot, dude. What happened to my laptop? Okay. Oh, you know what? Is my laptop plugged in? Am I plugged into the right port?
Where are you from, Edgar?
Huh? Oh, Queens, New York.
Queens, New York. Okay. East Coast.
Okay. We're here. All right.
Yeah, I may have to jump off of here at some point because my wife has a tire that is a little bit low on pressure, so we've got to go and get the tire looked at.
Okay. And say hi to the bird for us, too. All right. Well, I think we're ready to go live. I think it's 2 o'clock, so I'm going to hit my...
Yeah, the bird may monitor and record this podcast.
All right. Okay, so what I'm going to do real quick when I start the live stream, I'm going to mute Skype. We're going to start off with the national anthem. We're going to do the intro, and then we'll go straight to the call. So let me go ahead and get us live.
This is CoCoTALK, the nation's leading live talk show featuring the Tandy color computer, with your host, Mr. Gameplay Goodness himself, Stevie Stroud.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Welcome to episode 23 of CoCoTALK Live. Today is August 26, 2017, and we've got another great show in store for you, and we've got a great panel of guests, as always, and so I'll just go ahead and start introducing who we have here with us from the top right-hand corner. The legendary, iconic, prolific Steve Bjork is with us. The lovely and talented and breaker of things, David Ladd, is with us. Host of Ron's Garage, Ron Delvaux is here. Creator of many foreign imported games, Nick Marentes is with us from Australia. G'day, Nick.
G'day.
From the Wild East, we've got Barry Nelson. Mark Overholzer is with us from the Great White North. L. Curtis Boyle. We have Grant Leedy with us. We've got Jay Cyril with his nuclear explosion. And we're also very happy to have a very special guest with us from the Retro Video Game Music Revival Hour, Edgar Valasco. Welcome to the show, Edgar. How are you?
Greetings and salutations to all.
It's great to have you. So we're here to talk about what we love talking about, which is the Tandy color computer, as we like to call it, the CoCo. And this is it. This is CoCoTALK episode 23. We don't have a specific topic, but we do have a handful of things and segments we're going to cover. And a few things came up in the mailing list, even just today, this is the thing I love about our little community here, is that even when we're like less than an hour from going live and I'm like, dude, what are we going to talk about today? Poof, something shows up. It shows up in the mailing list or it shows up on Facebook. So there is literally, there has not been a shortage of things to discuss in 23 weeks so far. So that's been kind of great. And going around the room before we get into the show, and I know, Ron, you're pressed for time, right, Ron? You've got,
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get to Ron's Garage first, but just going around the room real quick, everybody want to say hi and maybe tell us what's been going on with you this week? Anything you want to share with us that retro fans and geek culture people might find of interest?
Nothing new for me.
Okay, yeah, we don't all have to go at once now.
Back in 1974, I just had my wedding anniversary yesterday, and that was fun.
All right.
Before any computers.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
I put a Final Grom 99 cartridge on my TI-99 4A, and I've been playing around with tons of cartridges, images I could not run before, which is been keeping me busy. My CoCo's also been keeping me busy.
Is that similar to like the CoCo SDC, where it's real hardware that then runs images?
No, it's more like the CoCo Flash. It loads cartridge images, not disk images.
Okay. Okay.
For disk images on the TI, I've got one of those floppy disk emulators with the HXC software on it.
Okay. Okay. Very cool. So Jim Brain wants to know when he wants to come in and discuss hardware. Jim can join us anytime, and we'll do our quick introductions, and maybe we'll talk about the hardware discussion, and then we'll get into Ron's garage. But why don't we also start by introducing our special guest who's not been on our show before, Edgar Valasco. I have been watching your Facebook group for a while, and you got all kinds of cool little clips and music stuff and cool little nostalgic stuff that's I've been watching on Facebook. But I just recently also started listening to your podcast, and the one I've been listening to now is the Retro Video Game Music Revival Hour. So maybe you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the things you're doing in the nostalgia communities.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me on your show with an elite panel of individuals who are probably 10 times as smarter than me in putting together a computer than I'll probably ever will be. But pretty much for me, it's in the retro community and anything in general. It's always fun for me, I always find it as a learning experience because there are certain things in my childhood that I was never, appreciative of or never got the chance to get into. Especially when it comes to video game music and anything nostalgia. With these days, when someone mentions nostalgia, people usually think it's like a quick cash-in thing. When in reality, nostalgia to many of us, it's something that we're invested, not so much financially, but more emotionally, because look at the current status right now where DuckTales has come back and Sonic is like the #1 video game right now. Like somehow we all fell into a wormhole filled with Mountain Dew and we're back in the 90s. Where's my Surge? I know that Zima recently came back and actually so to some corporations there is that financial status that they need to make that easy buck, but for those who really know it, there's like a huge investment in all of us that it kind of pulls at the heartstrings, but also brings us back to a time when it was simpler, that maybe we didn't understand things, especially when it comes to video game music, where whatever systems from the generations were, be it before or after the video game crash of 1983, 1984. There is something that, be it, World 1 for the first Super Mario Brothers to whatever, orchestral, composition is made for whatever, triple game. There's always something that, it's something that gets us, that we put something that we used to put a lot of investment.
Barry, can you mute your mic when you're not talking? The bird is hijacking our speaker right now.
Oh, I'll try to do that. Hold on.
Sorry about that, Edgar. Thanks, Barry.
No, it's cool. It's understandable. The bird wants to, apparently.
The bird's chiming in on nostalgia as well. So,
the bird's having a retro nostalgia moment too. So
what's the bird's name? CoCo?
The bird's name is actually Einstein Bird.
No, but it's also, similar to like this podcast that you guys are discussing about the TRS-80. There is something with that we had a connection to growing up, or even to the current times where even if it's something that we didn't put a lot of effort in or a lot of heart behind, there's always that learning experience of like learning about it, why it's popular, or why it, kind of reaches us, beyond a level where we understand it more so and even love it even more and appreciate it more in current, times than we did in our youth,
Absolutely. That's true for me. Yeah. I've learned so much in the past couple of years.
Well, we still play Monopoly. We still play all kinds of these board games, and they weren't developed yesterday. They can, and we have, there's lots of people that play chess and checkers, and Lord only knows how old those games are. Why should computer games that are good be any different?
Yep.
Exactly, especially when you discover the composers, the people who the people who actually put it together, but more importantly, from software to hardware, there's that integral point of creativity and just the pretty much being able to use a medium and redefine it via make it more integral by making the person being participated more so. But it's just another way of telling a story, be it interactive or something else.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, you're specializing in video game music, and I mean, I don't think a lot of us, the ones who were kids back in the day of the CoCo's heyday in the '80s, kind of realized how much the backs up were against the wall to get sound out of the thing, because we didn't have a dedicated sound chip like the Ataris and the Commodores did. So you have a much better appreciation now that for the games that do have really good music in them, like how hard that was, especially if it's trying to do it simultaneously while you're animated graphics, etc.
Yeah, you literally had to push out 6 bits at a time.
Yeah, our system was unique in the '80s. We had the worst sound of any '80s era system, next to the Apple II.
Next to the Apple II.
Yeah, so Apple, Commodore,
we had 6-bit.
Atari.
The Apple only had 1-bit.
Ah, yes. So we were in second place for crappy sound.
Well, we might have been ahead of the ZX81 and the 82, I think.
Yeah.
No, but it's also just how people were able to make a lot with so less. You know what I mean? That and truly appreciate that more. Like, wow, they probably put a lot of like maybe 8-hour weeks or something like that to just, even if it's the simplest sound from a enter or accept into just like a little title screen or something like that, a little 30-second loop. You start to appreciate that they put a lot of effort into something that maybe someone would brush their shoulder, wouldn't even acknowledge. But the fact that a lot of effort is put into something, and it's now appreciated into, there's various communities that appreciate that, from, what you guys are doing, video game music, cartoons, or even anything created, as long as that medium is there, there's always going to be, like I always say, there's an audience for everything. Sometimes it takes time to get there, or sometimes that they just need to be pointed in the right direction. Like, oh, wow, I was into this. Let me follow it. And then that, area that grows, and then you got a whole community that truly appreciates that. And then it's followed more, and all you can do is just grow and grow. You meet people, and you see various, I would say, from various people, their interactions, but more importantly, just different point of views of maybe the same thing. And you begin to appreciate how vast, in a way, it's a learning experience from when you thought you didn't want to learn.
Yeah.
Edgar, I was going to ask you. I haven't heard your podcast. Do you kind of concentrate on the video game music as a music, like as from a music appreciation side? Do you get into the technical side, like we really push the sound chip to do something it wasn't designed to do, or do you cover all of that, or how does it work?
I wish I could do that, but then the podcast wouldn't be about the music; it would more be the technical aspects. What I do is basically, it's either pick either a subject, a composer, or a specific theme that follows. Like, oh, this is a holiday episode, so we'll put up some Halloween-related games and things like that. And then just play the music but of course always making sure that the original composer is credited, so like, oh, here's this from this game released on this date, composed by this composer, heavy emphasis on the composer and their piece of work. So more or less it's like maybe like a 2-minute intro of what I'm discussing, and then I go straight to the music with not so much info, because for me it's more about just listening to the tracks and appreciating more, and then that whoever listens to it can be inspired to maybe look at that composer's work, or even listen to something else in that same field to appreciate it more. Range from like current and like past games and systems and things like that.
Actually, along those lines, would you say that there's quite a difference between the 8-bit and 16-bit era of the video game consoles?
Oh, yeah, definitely, in terms of just, of course, the advancements of technology and Super Nintendo at the time, using a sound chip that was created by Sony that helped elevate that musical tone, where 8-bit was more or less, I believe, only five channels of particular, tunes they can use, where 16-bit is a lot more like you want to hear a bass from a game. You can actually hear the bass line of it on a 16-bit console, where 8-bit, you only get about those 5 proper channels, and it's very limited. But you get to appreciate it more in that way because they, again, like I say, they did so much with so little. Right, and again, even to this day, where they're independent artists that have their keyboards hooked up to an original Game Boy to get some interesting sounds. So there's that weird, advancement, but still, appreciating the past, but also making way that how it made the way for future compositions to be like that. So for me, it isn't like, oh, this sound chip is better than this sound chip. For me, it's more the overall, like, this sounds great, this is amazing. It doesn't really matter for what console or what generation it comes from.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you also cover like just stuff that's not game related but computer music related, like some of the stuff that was done with MIDI back in the day, or maybe some of the mod player stuff like the Amiga did? Do you cover any of that kind of stuff?
I did do an episode covering. Actually, I have 2 episodes. One hosted by a friend of mine who did an episode covering all the LucasArts computer games, and I did one covering a good chunk of PC game related stuff. I forget what majority of stuff, but it was certainly a good chunk of, I believe, Amiga and some other tracks. It was one of my earliest episodes. I don't remember what it is, but I definitely did cover. I do cover some computer stuff occasionally, depending on what the actual subject that I'm covering for that. If it's a specific composer or a specific theme, then I'll definitely will put that in there.
Okay.
Have you ever done anything with any of the tracks from the Ultima series?
Oh, I wish. There's even some ZX Spectrum stuff I would like to use down the line.
Yeah, that podcast is running about 2 years now, right? It goes back to about 2014.
Yeah, it's very old. Originally it's mostly like maybe 1 episode per month because balancing work, and then on top of everything else I work on, it's quite troubling because for me it's not like, oh, I'll just listen to one particular track. It's like I'll listen to an entire like catalog of a particular theme and whatnot. Then I'll see like, okay, I'll choose this particular track. This track will be selectable. This one sounds okay, and then from then on, because it isn't just this one. I have another podcast called Nostalgia Road Trip with me and a friend, discuss just random stuff. He loves a bunch of LucasArts game. He discusses it. While me, I'm not the straight man in that podcast where I'm more of a discuss anything out of my butt. He's the straight man who discusses his love for all Amiga, ZX Spectrum, all that PC related stuff, I believe, and for that, that's his thing. Well, I try to at least maybe in a way trying to trample on whatever he's trying to get on and just throw anything out. Because I have covered a lot of Amiga, MS-DOS, some Windows and Mac stuff, Amiga 500, some Commodore 64 stuff, as well as just those familiars. But there's definitely a lot of other stuff that there's a vastness of areas that I can go into, which is great because then I can always grab a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and create something that is entertaining for someone's commute to work.
Yeah, that's what I liked about it. I actually started listening in the car because I usually put it on a flash drive. I'll download a bunch of MP3s of 8-bit music, put it on a flash drive. But now I'm listening to your podcast and I'm hearing the music. I'm also hearing a little bit of a story. So I like your format. It's you get a little bit of upfront information. You hear the tracks, and then you just kind of get that little reminder bit on who the composers were and what the titles were. And it's great entertainment. I really enjoyed the show. I'm looking forward to hearing more of those episodes.
And I was also going to ask, like, I know, like, The Verge, I don't know if they still do it anymore, but they used to have, whenever they're doing their trade shows and stuff in New York, they'd usually have a beginning and end of their public show with people using like old Game Boys and stuff like that, and they'd actually write modern music and play it live with like 5 or 6 people holding these controllers and stuff that they'd specially designed to play the music with. Do you cover that kind of stuff as well?
Like hopefully occasionally. It's just I never don't know the artist or any particular places to go to find stuff like that, because a good chunk of it sometimes is only available if you go to that event. Occasionally, maybe someone will be able to put some video on YouTube, but even then, maybe the quality won't sound as good as it would like an high quality one directly, uploaded one. Sometimes that's the problem with certain things like that, and some of these artists, some put their stuff on like Bandcamp where I can listen to it and download it, but a good chunk of them are sometimes off of YouTube and they don't sound quite as clear, because I try to at least to put the best quality out there so they can just listen and it's and have a great ambience about it, in its best quality.
Okay.
Right.
There's a band out of Los Angeles called 8-Bit Weapon, and they use like Game Boys, Commodore 64. They just did an album with Apple and a specialized parallel processing, get 8-bit sound. So anyway, they're on Bandcamp. I posted a link on the live.
Cool. I love to hear that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And Mark, that's exactly what I was talking about. There's a bunch of those bands. I know the Verge used to hire them for all of their events, and there was like multiple different bands you'd get each time. I haven't watched some of their events in a while, though, so I don't know if they're still doing that.
Yeah, 8-Bit Weapon does live performances.
What I love about the video game music, especially when you look at some of the 8-bit stuff, where even though there were systems that had synthesizers, and the synthesizers were halfway decent, you look at that quote-unquote instrument compared to what is available in the whole spectrum of music. The instrument isn't as important as the actual music, and it's true with any musician. You could have the most, like for me, I can't play a guitar, so you could give me a $10 trillion guitar. I'm not going to make it sound good. But if somebody is a good musician and a good composer, and the music has some feeling and some emotion and some energy to it, the music transcends the instrument in a sense. And that is what happened a lot, especially in the 8-bit 80s, is we had this really good emotional music that really fit the games and are part of that whole memory. It's like there are things in our mind that's kind of just like burned into our DNA. And I can remember listening to music on my Sony Walkman, and I will always remember where I was, what I was doing, and what song. When I hear a song on the radio, when I hear like Foreigner 4 and I hear something like Jukebox Hero, I can say, you know what? I remember when I used to work at Publix and I was a bag boy and I had that in the cassette of my Walkman player. All those memories come right back. And so when you talk about the nostalgia and how it all comes together, the same thing is true for video game music, especially, that 80s era music. I remember the game. I remember how many hours I had to work to save the money to buy that game. I remember the first time I heard the song, how my freaking head just exploded because I was blown away by it. You have those appreciations if you're a music appreciator, so I'm a frustrated musician, but I'm a huge music appreciator, and I love the 8-bit 80s music. I always will. It's always going to have a special place for me.
Yeah, Stephen, I have to agree too. I've had the same experience where, if I suddenly pop in something like Grabber Draconian, which has original music by the person that wrote the game, and then it brings back memories of me, with visiting with a bunch of friends gathered around a CoCo to see this new game type thing back in like 84 or whatever it was.
I can forget important things, but I can remember lyrics, Sorry, Ron.
Are you guys familiar with Final Fantasy?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
From 1 to, I think, 12 or 14.
Well, they're on 15 right now, yeah.
Right, okay. Well, my son was involved with a CD that redid with the video music, from those games. And he has a track on the CD.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Yeah, he did some kind of work on it. I don't know exactly, but
we're gonna play one of his tracks when we go over to Ron's garage.
Yeah.
Now, out of curiosity, does your podcast just concentrate on the music, or do you do the entire soundscape of the game where you have the interactive sounds that come in while playing?
I wish, but I'd rather just focus on the entire music. Maybe I'll, like an outro or an intro occasionally, throw in like a sound bit, but nothing too that distracts from the actual music. It's just pretty much straight up the music, not much fluff, because I've heard various other video game podcasts where they they kind of take a sidebar from the music and discuss something else, which takes about maybe 20 to 15 minutes, where the main focus should be about the music. At least that's how I think. Whereas and the good thing about podcasting is, again, there's always, the different variations on literally like the same type of formula. Like there's various podcasts on video game music. There's one to dissect every track, bit by bit by the composer, maybe tell a story behind it, and I'm glad that there's that variation that exists. For me, it's like I just want to go straight to the music because I'm more or less, it's about appreciating that and the actual composer.
And last one follow-up question from a little bit as far as composers go. Do you play much by Fat Man?
Not aware of that individual, but if you give me a link, I'll probably listen.
Well, when I was working with a company called THQ, we used him quite a bit, and I still remember when he composed his first soundscape and music for a Super Nintendo. He said this was the first time on a game console he ever heard his music the way he intended it to be.
Wow, that sounds pretty awesome.
That is pretty awesome.
Yep.
That's cool. That's cool. I just put a link, Edgar, to your Facebook group on not only in our internal Skype chat, but I put it in the YouTube live stream too. So people watching now will see that, and I'll put that link in the description of this video later when it comes to replay on audio and video format. So that's cool.
No
Music is I think music is part of our DNA as human creatures. And for those of us who are fans of vintage and retro type things, some of the older music rings true for us. I just remember as a kid when my parents would listen to what back then we called the oldies, and you're saying to yourself, "God, Dad, Mom, why are you listening to this old crappy music from the 50s and the 60s? Don't you know this is the 70s? Don't you know we've got things like KC and the Sunshine Band now? Get with the times, But now I'm the old guy who's nostalgic for the oldies of the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. Those are now oldies now, and so I totally get it. It's like what rings true to you from those times in your life and stuff. And maybe we can talk offline, Edgar, and I can give you a bunch of content where you could do a special on music that appeared on the color computer. It's all going to sound pretty much the same, but I can maybe give you some content on something for a future show. Very cool. Very cool. Bruce Moore has just joined us. Hey, Bruce, how are you? Or maybe not. Let me say hi to Luis in the chat. So Luis Fernandez in Mexico is in the live chat with us. So welcome, Luis, and welcome, Bruce, if you can hear us.
Mike's plugged in finally.
All right.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you, Bruce. As a musician and AV guy, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. All right. So why don't we do this? Because Ron is a little bit pressed for time. And we can always jump back, but let's jump into now. What are we gonna do, Ron? Because you gave me the video of the printer. Do you want me to show that video, or do you want to show something yourself from your camera?
Show that, and then we'll do the FidoNet stuff or whatever, and then.
All right.
I got a screen here I want to show and talk about a little bit, and then. Whatever.
Okay, I'm gonna share sound here for just a minute so you guys can hear Ron's little intro graphic here. Hello, Simon Jonassen, the Madman, has joined us as well. Hey, Simon, all the way from Denmark. All right, so guys, be prepared to have your mind and your ears blown, because this is actually Ron's son is playing this track here right now too. It is time for Ron's Garage with a peek into the past featuring the personal computer collection of Ron Delvaux. Take it away, Ron. How do you like that talk over? That's pretty crappy, right? So
Good enough.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pull up that video, Ron, so bear with me for just a second here. I got to find it now.
You can go through the Rainbow on disc. That would be cool too.
I'm not physically, technologically, or mentally prepared to do that. We might have to save that for another week.
Okay.
I can play a video clip. I'm good for that. So
okay.
But tell us about that while I'm getting the video queued up.
It's what, the Rainbow on tape?
Yeah.
Or Rainbow on disc. Yeah. It's just October '89. I picked one up and I threw it on the emulator thing and copied it so that we can I'll play with it. I put it on my site there. There's the floppy. You can see it. The floppy's cool because it's
nobody else can see it yet because I'm trying to find it. Is your video on your page now too?
Yeah.
The printer video?
Mm-hmm.
And is that this one right here?
No.
No.
That's a picture.
Is it? It's not this one here, is it?
No, that's the one. Maybe it's not there.
Okay,
it's
YouTube video. Printer can print again. Let me make sure that this is it, and then I'll switch screens where everybody else in the live stream can see it. Okay, here we go. So let me switch over to where everybody else can see this live.
It's got 7 seconds of that logo, so go ahead and
that's fine. We're going to maximize this right now. All right, here we go. Ron Delvau's garage.
And although I wanted to show you guys how you can get your printer to work again with the old cartridge. I don't hear sound. I took some.
Yeah, I got to share audio with you guys.
WD-40 and sprayed it in the cartridge and let it set for a little while. Then I loaded up Ultimate Term and let's see how it works, or if it works.
I love those monitor switches. Those were so cool to have.
Something from CompuServe from back in the day, which is pretty cool to see.
That's so cool that he still got CompuServe saved on his computer.
12/16/1990, before the internet.
That brings back memories. Ultimate Term and CompuServe.
That brings back memories of really large bills.
Yes. Especially
paying by the hour, right?
Let's print the buffer. P.
Speaking of memories, dot matrix printers.
I put WD-40 in the cartridge. And I got it to print again. I haven't printed with this printer in a long time.
So is the cartridge itself like seized up?
Oh, there it goes. No, it wasn't seized up. It was just dry.
Okay.
So I put I just sprayed it in there about 10 minutes before I did this, but now it works perfectly because it got the saturate in there.
So the WD-40 kind of reactivates the ink on the fabric and rejuvenates it?
Yep. 600 baud.
DMP 110 right there, huh?
Yeah. Really cool.
That's cool.
If you look at a print cartridge, it's probably slightly damp to the touch. If you ever touch them, they're not dried out. So that's what happens after many years. They just dry.
Right. Okay, let me switch back over here. I had to, I've realized that now I need to almost get like a third monitor because of the way I'm doing things.
You need a TriCaster is what you need.
That's all we need. All right, well, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about some more stuff. Welcome to the show, Simon. Glad to have you here. And we'll be right back after these messages. Guys, Original Gamer Stevie Stroh here, and when you're done with CoCoTALK, if you gotta have more cowbell, then head on over to my YouTube channel for your share of gameplay goodness. There you will find over 1,300 family-friendly gameplay videos. Everything from the old school to the next gen, and over 200 color computer gameplay videos, as well as interviews and replays of CoCoTALK. So if you need your share of gameplay goodness, then check out the Original Gamer Stevie Stroh on YouTube at youtube.com/OG Stevie Stroh.
Hello, my name is Grant Beatty, and I watch the Original Gamer Stevie Stroh.
All right, we're back. We are back, and that was a real brief commercial. And I want to show you guys a couple of things before we get back into talking with our panel real quick. So let me go ahead and share screens one more time. And just out of curiosity, Edgar, because you've been podcasting for a while, do you know how many listens you get each month or downloads or whatever the right terminology for that would be?
Looking at the statistics too, like the SoundCloud thing, I pretty much get, depending on what the episode covers, about maybe 30 to 60 listens per day. So like
per day. That's
per
pretty
day.
good.
Yeah,
That's pretty
30
good.
40 listens per day, which is good looking at the stats, and and also like getting certain listens from around the world, from Spain to Mexico, even Japan itself. one or two listens now and then. It's like it's good that it's reaching so many people,
Yeah.
especially wide things like this. So like, and the fact that it does, even when I'm not posting anything, they're still like around 30 to even 24 on the slowest days. There's
Wow.
still people listening to that per day. So that actually is like cool. I'm not doing anything, and it's still my numbers are going up.
That's awesome.
But it's more or less just making sure that everybody gets it and the availability is there, and it's good. It's good for me to know that what I'm putting my heart into, my hours into, my free time pretty much into, it's paying off. I'm not gonna say I'm glad that I have a job so I don't have to depend on this, but at least
Right. Yeah, no, that's cool. That's impressive. That's really good. So, what I was surprised about is that this show that we're doing, it's such a niche show. We're talking about a 37-year-old computer, and the number of people who are still actively interested in this computer are. John Strong's trying to call, and I'm not able to add him to the group call. So, John, if you're listening, I can't add you. You might need to update Skype. I'm not sure. So we're doing a pretty niche show, and the fact that we're still running now 23 weeks, and we get an average of about 200 views per week, is pretty impressive considering the subject matter. It's very niche, and just about 3 weeks ago is when we decided to go to podcast format, and I'll share those numbers in just a minute too. But I wanted to show you like what happened last week. So last week's show, and something interesting happened last week. So if you guys were here live, you saw me do my little version of the cowbell song, and so I took an 8-bit version of the Blue Oyster Cult song that was made famous by Saturday Night Live and Will Ferrell with his whole little cowbell sketch, and I also edited in some video of Saturday Night Live. Now, apparently, the copyright police were not happy with that at all. So even though we did a show that was basically, how long was this show? It was a pretty long show too. It was 2 hours and 36 minutes. And so a minute and a half of that contains some edited footage from Saturday Night Live. That video has been shut down worldwide. So NBC, Universal, and YouTube have seen fit to shut down that entire show. So the original airing, which got 70 views live, can no longer be seen, and I can't access it. I can't download it. I can't even access my own show. I was able to kind of edit around it, and I have the replays of the show in part 1 and part 2 where those parts are cut out. So when you combine the original 70 views with like roughly another 190 views, we've gotten like 260 views on last week's show. So that's not bad for our little niche thing. And John Strong, I can't add you to the call still. John Strong is trying to call in. Can't add him. So that was episode 22. So, over 200 views, not bad. The previous one's at 190 views. Definitely not bad. 218 views. So, our little show it's gaining a life, and there's people who are watching it. So that's always nice to see. Here's some feedback that we've gotten through comments on the web. So one of the feedbacks I just got, somebody came and talking about people finding things. Like I've got videos I've done on YouTube that I did a year ago that still people will find them later on. And so I just got a comment on a video I did over a year ago of the Contras for the color computer. And somebody says, is this what this thing looked like on a stock CoCo 3? I had a 512K CoCo 3, but I don't remember anything looking or working this decent. So yeah, I responded to Mike on that one. This person here, Wayne Aaron, was commenting on our video from last week. He said, I was just at the theater and there was a movie poster that had the name CoCo on it from Pixar. I thought the CoCo name was copyrighted. By the way, I love to watch all your CoCo videos. So I don't think CoCo is copyrighted. CoCo is kind of a nickname that Rainbow Magazine or something came up with for the color computer, right?
Besides, the term CoCo is too generic. You can't trademark it.
Yeah. John Strong is here. I'm hearing a lot of background noise right now. John, are you there?
Yeah.
Can you try muting your mic for 1 second? Because I'm hearing a lot of interference. Okay, so that was kind of cool to hear that. Here was another comment here. On CoCoTALK number 21, I was looking for a Color Computer 2 program that you type in. It's the dancing block guy with music and one of the getting started of extended color basic guides. I'm going to have to find that one because he says it's not in the PDF that's on the archive. We got a question from James Jones that said, is there any chance that you can give us the times at which the various topics start? And that's kind of like what the CoCo crew does. They've got show notes, and the show notes tell you at how many minutes into the show what was discussed. And I've already responded to him. I basically said, right now, I just don't have the time to do that. And I'd actually probably want to lean on maybe some community crowdsourcing to help with that, because I've spent enough time recording and then editing and then reposting as a podcast that I don't know that I'm going to have time to give you that much detail in show notes. But the future is wide open, as Tom Petty once said. We got a bunch of comments on last week's episode, too. If you guys remember that we debuted the groovy CoCo Crew track, and so Crash Codes was commenting on that, saying that was groovy. He said Nick Marentes' Pac-Man clone is pretty smooth, and also commenting on the Seamus music, saying Seamus is a game my sister and I played on my Atari 800. So, yeah, so cool feedback from around the web. Just to real quick look at, I think I've covered the comments from YouTube right now, so that's good. So I want to point out some of the websites, because I've been working hard on this too. In the past 3 weeks, and by the way, for those watching who haven't heard this, we get about 200 people per week who watch CoCoTALK live or watch it on a replay on YouTube. Well, CoCoTALK is now also a podcast, and you can listen to it wherever podcasts are sold, right? So you can get it on iTunes and Google Play and Stitcher, and you can get it from our website. I created a website called CoCoTALK.live, and so on CoCoTALK.live you can watch all the video replays, and you can listen to all the podcast replays, and there's going to be other things here of interest as well. So CoCoTALK.live is the official web source for this show, and this show is going to become bigger than just a video show. We continue to come up with ideas on how to expand the show. So that's been a work in progress, making the CoCoTALK Live website. I'm a coconut.com too, shameless plug here, but this has been a page I've had forever where I've been compiling links that I've been discovering. Well, the links got to be so many that I couldn't fit them on one page anymore. It got to be pretty busy. So I've turned the links page into a links site. So if you go to imacoconut.com, you can find links based on different categories. So for example, like communities and events is one of the categories where you can get the links to Tandy Assembly and the Color Computer Facebook group and the MC10 and Dragon Facebook group, right? So blogs and projects. So as people make me aware of the different projects they're working on, I will have links to all the various projects. Most recently, Barry Nelson informed me of the links of his RGB to SCART cables and his composite designs, and I've got all the links now for Roger Taylor's CoCo on a Chip project, right? So if you're interested in the Tandy Color Computer, you can go to imacoconut.com, and as I discover more information or people provide me more information, we'll continue to update this site. And then also here, shameful plug, this is a new website I've tweaked as well, but our retro swag shop featuring custom design merchandise by Instagram artist Joel M. Adams, who happens to be the son of Rick Adams. Well, that website is 8bit256.com, and members of the show, we all now have our official CoCoTALK t-shirts, right? Except me, of course. I'm going to be the last one to get it. But yeah, we've got all these cool t-shirts and coffee mugs you can get, and one of them is the official t-shirt for the CoCoTALK show. So if you like CoCoTALK, maybe grab yourselves a CoCoTALK t-shirt or coffee mug or whatever the case may be. Cool stuff like that. So those are some websites I've been working on. I've been really busy these past couple of weeks. And speaking of numbers right now, we've only been a podcast for about 3 weeks. And in the past 3 weeks, we've gotten 733 downloads to our episodes. So we are averaging 30 plus listens per episode. The most listened to one right now is episode 1. It's been out there the longest. But the second most listened to one right now is our OS 9 episode, which I only published maybe 2 days ago. So OS 9 is almost as popular as our first episode. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Just wanted to share some of that with you guys. So yeah, things are happening in our little community, our obscure little retro community. So good stuff. Ron, you got more stuff to show us?
Well, I just wanted to show you how terrible it is to see the CoCo 1 on TV with a TV.
Yes, it is.
It's terrible.
It's terrible, but it's lovely at the same time because it just brings back memories.
Yeah, it's nostalgic.
Nostalgic.
Can you see all the green letters?
Yeah.
They're supposed to be black.
Oh. That's not supposed to look like that. Okay.
Oh, well. That's it. I just wanted to show how terrible.
Newsflash: old TVs look like crap. This just in from.
Now there's VGA. There's all kinds of units to hook up to it. So.
Very cool.
I gotta go. All
right. Hey, Ron.
Somebody
Thanks.
else can come in.
Thanks for showing us the printer video. I will put a link to your Facebook group now, too, because Ron's Garage, he's created a Facebook group, and Ron's got some incredible photographs. He's got an incredible collection that he's been maintaining. He's got some really cool stuff. So we'll see him. We'll see the pictures, and then we'll see him showing them off on the show. Thanks, Ron.
Thanks a lot.
Take care. All right.
See you, Ron.
Davey Mitchell's here in the live chat. How are you, Davey Mitchell? Davey Mitchell says, I used to have an audio cassette of Dragon stereo music. It was made using 2 Dragons, both running 4-channel composer music with slightly different arrangements for the left and right channels. Forgot who came up with it back in the day, though. Oh, that's cool, Davey. That's very cool. Thanks for sharing that with us. John Strong, you joined us a little bit late. How you doing, John? Or maybe he's still muted. Simon Jonassen, welcome to the show.
I'm unmuted.
Oh, you're unmuted. Okay. What's been going on with you lately, John? We have not had you on the show in a while. I know you're busy, too. So what's going on in your world?
Just really busy here. You can probably hear it. Now.
I can. The volume and the quality are both very poor right now.
Okay, how about this? Any better? Any better?
Not really. Okay. One of the joys of doing a live Skype show.
Well, I think my cable on my headphones wearing out.
All right. Well, we'll give you a second to get situated there. And Simon Jonassen from Denmark, the madman who's been cranking out vector art and 3D polygons and all kinds of other cool things. And I just saw one of your most recent videos, Simon, where you've got IRQ-based music playing in the background while you're loading files off of a floppy and running a demo. And does the madness ever end?
No.
Simple and to the point.
Just actually, I want to. Someone told me that you can never do it. Like someone told me you can never load a tape and play music at the same time. And I'm thinking, well, okay, I'll probably be wrong.
Right.
So for this right now, you can hear the music stuttering. That's when you're having like sector changes or track changes. Potentially because I'm using Deep B, but I want to actually address the floppy controller itself without any kind of DOS in the picture, and to possibly gain more time. I think Curtis will probably nod at this. To gain more time, I'll probably use single density instead of double density.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because right now the halt line, I think, is the biggest holdup on the way they have it set up with the NMI to tell you you're done reading a sector.
Yeah, exactly. Because what it basically does, you've got a little tiny loop, and it's a very, very tight loop because the floppy disk controller is running 2 megahertz, where the 6809 is running 1 megahertz. But if you throw it into single density mode, it's actually running 1 megahertz. So you don't need to do it the same way.
Yeah, you could actually monitor the status bits and not have a hard-coded loop and not have an NMI and everything else.
Exactly, and so you should be somewhere along the line able to fit in a few cycles here and there. I mean, it's all got to be timed. I mean, we both know that.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, wasn't there somebody that had a floppy disk controller that was no halt, and they had drivers for OS 9?
There was multiple ones. Disto had their supercontroller 2, which had a 256-byte buffer. Performance Peripherals had one with an 8 or a 32K buffer, so you could read an entire track without any interruption whatsoever. The Frank Hogg Eliminator, which used the WD-1000 and 205 dual floppy hard drive controller, was also no halt. So yeah, there was several back in the day.
Cool stuff. And
remember, didn't Radio Shack sell the Disto SC2 through express order in the late 80s? I think they did.
Yeah, they did.
Didn't advertise or tell you really what it did or anything, but
does the CoCo SDC handle like a no halt?
not on the floppy part, I don't think, because it's trying to emulate the original controller for compatibility purposes.
And you were running that video on an emulator too, right, Simon?
I was running it on an emulator, yes, but I ran it on every emulator under the sun.
Okay. Because one of the things we will talk about when we get to our little tech talk is some of the things that have been going on with emulated type stuff and the CoCo SDC DOS that got updated and based on a discussion we had last week as well and stuff. So that's cool stuff. John Strong, any better luck with the headset or anything?
Well, I don't know. We'll give it a try.
Okay.
I'll just say hi and it's going to contain.
Well, we can hear you. It's not super clear, but we can hear you. Are you back in the International Space Station again? Is that why you're up there?
Sounds like a bandwidth.
I believe we're experiencing sunspots.
I believe he's not using a no-hold controller, so he's getting halted every...
Here's a sunspot.
Well, I did do a mistake because I need to really look up the wired internet with this for Skype. I'm so used to running Skype for work and not having to do that.
Yeah. Right now it sounds like I'm talking to you through a Jack-in-a-Box drive-through.
Well, I'll just say hi.
Karen,
we can't hear him. Yeah, we can't hear him.
Sorry about that, John. We'll just keep trying. Okay, add to group call now. I can't add you to the call, Ciaran. Or maybe you are coming in. I'm not sure. Maybe it just takes a minute. Okay, maybe he's coming through. All right, Ciaran has just joined us. So, Bruce Moore, how are you?
I have my mic back on.
There you go. Anything you want to share with us as far as what you're working on?
Well, my mic was unplugged, by the way, because I was doing some room acoustic testing with a different microphone. I just forgot to plug back in. So,
okay,
I'm doing something tech there. Yeah,
bad days too.
That's true. And we miss things, of course. No, I was just there was a post recently about this IDE. I think of it, and someone was talking about this Pheonix system for doing development and recommending it, and I think Bill Noble uses it, and
it's Roger Taylor's.
As Roger Taylor's, yeah, and I didn't know about it, and so I'm looking at that and thinking, that could maybe move things along a lot easier than using VED, the editor on the CoCo there. So I'm pondering this stuff. Of course, the drawback being that I believe this is paid. Roger Taylor's is a paid software, and so I'm just kind of hemming and hawing over it right now. See if I'm ready to go that route or not. But yeah.
Yeah, being a non-developer, when I first see IDE, the first thing I think of is a hard drive. I'm like, why is everybody worried about hard drives? We've got better solutions at this point, And then I remember it's integrated development environments. So
yeah.
We got to come up with inconsistent acronyms or something, non-overlapping acronyms. So.
Well, I think wasn't Steve Bjork, wasn't he actually asking about that recently? Maybe that's why it kind of surfaced on the Facebook group, asking about an environment.
Yeah, well, I used to have a pretty nice system when I was developing. It was PC-based and at the end, but I was just hoping that maybe there was something that was more of a community-created IDE where it's an ongoing development and then different people have inputs to it. And the idea is that what I'm going to want as far as the graphic creation, the audio creation, is going to be a little bit different than probably the way his system works. And I'd like to be able to go in there and change that so it outputs in the format that I want. And a little difficult when you got somebody else that's developed the thing together instead of some sort of open source code that you can play around with.
Yeah. Well, and John Strong, I mean, he's always building tools as well that he might not hold on so tightly to, I think.
Yeah.
Possibilities.
Well, there's other cross-development stuff out there, though, isn't there? You guys should be familiar with some of these, right?
I don't know.
Like it was, I mean,
like LWASM and stuff?
LW Tools or LWSM. Ciaran's got something for Xroar.
Do these things handle graphics too, or just the code?
I tend to make a tool to fit my needs because I can't find it for graphics or sound, whatever. But anyone is welcome to my tool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, if you want to convert CoCo 2 graphics, be it P Mode 3, P Mode 4, or you want to convert graphics for the CoCo 3, I do have the tools for it, but most of my tools are Windows based. But it's simple code, and you could take it, run with it, and okay, I understand how it works.
Yeah, one of the things I'm thinking for the graphics like that, let's say that you've got an object that is a sprite for a character. You're going to have main classes of what the character looks like when he's standing, or when he's jumping, or when he's running, or dying, whatever it is. And those classes have animation sequences through there. And I want to be able to have the system output it so that when my program hits that graphics data set, it can figure out from the information of how to run the animation.
So basically, you just want to frame this like an animated GIF.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Say,
yeah.
Right. It's got
John Strong has demoed his tool set that does do that, but again, that's not necessarily freeware, but I believe he does share it.
Okay. I'll talk to him. We'll see. Eventually, maybe that might be the thing, is because the way the community is, and you can't make money off of this stuff really, is to try and put together some sort of open source project to create everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there was somebody that had made that whole game development system. We looked at it on a podcast. Can't remember the
Dino Sprite. Dino Sprite we did not too long ago.
I don't know if that had actual editors, though, if that was more just the development side. Or routines, library calls.
I was looking at that too, and it is pretty cool. This is Jay.
Hey, Jay.
And, hey. And it is pretty cool, like, for what it does, but it would not, I don't think it would generalize well into an IDE type situation. So it's probably more, I think on the episode that I did with MAME when I was on, we had talked a little bit about open source type development tools. It's still something I don't think is really, really been developed, I guess, to use the same word again. But it's something I had mentioned if we, would want to look into that. So maybe it's something as a community we can start thinking about and maybe moving towards. I think it'd be a good idea.
And go ahead. The other thing I'm looking at is, for my needs, I'd rather create it for a non-OS 9 environment, because as far as I'm concerned, OS 9 just gets in my way.
You and Nick would be in total agreement on
that. You hear that, Nick?
I totally agree.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. I guess my thing about it is, I think we have to try to come to a consensus on, in my opinion.
Well, we've got to stop right there. You got to stop right there. This community's never come to a consensus on anything. So
that is true. Hey, I just like to note that if you want to write a game and you want resources or graphics that fit on more than about a floppy disk's worth of space, then you have to use something with an operating system, and so the OS 9 is going to give you access to hard disk space.
No. Slow down a little bit. Nick will agree with me completely. Our games have their own operating system in there, and we can expand that operating system to access other environments. We're not limited to just talking to an old-fashioned floppy disk controller.
Hey.
Yeah, so I guess my thought was on that whole thing is to use, and I don't know, and like you said, getting consensus on this will probably be impossible, but my thought was to use something that is fairly cross-environment, something like Java or something.
Just real quick, Edgar's got to go. So, Edgar, thanks for stopping by today.
Thanks a lot, Ben. It's definitely been a pleasure, and you guys talking about this is definitely like a learning experience where even I might definitely read up on the CoCo and see and discuss with my other friend who definitely is a heavy PC user about this, and then we actually might have something to talk on my own other podcast.
There you go. And I'll get all the links and I'll post them later. But thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you being here, sir.
No problem, Chief. You guys take it easy, and thank you so
Okay.
much for this opportunity to talk. Thank you.
No problem. Take care.
Later, Edgar.
Later.
Sorry about that, guys.
That's
Yeah.
all right.
That's all right.
We were basically saying that OS 9 sucks, right?
No, no,
Hey, I
no,
was pointing out that it gives you.
OS9 has its place. It just doesn't have a place for games.
There you go.
I disagree. There's a number of games that are written that run under OS 9, and it all depends on what type of game you're trying to write, etc.
Okay. If you want to do your Candy Crush, or you want to do your board games, or you want to do that stuff that don't require a lot of CPU usage and like that, sure, go ahead, use OS 9. But if you're getting in there and you're trying to work hard on the graphics and things like that, and you've got window, screen modes that would never, ever possibly work under OS 9, I don't see how you could use OS 9 for those games.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing that's nice about doing something that's open source is that if you have a group of people that want to do RS-DOS, they can develop the libraries for that. Somebody wants to do OS 9, and it can all be integrated into the environment. So
Yeah, I agree with that. That it should be able to handle both. And Steve's right. I mean, if you want to do casual games, OS 9 is fine. You can do some limited arcade games. You just can't push the hardware to the absolute limit, because otherwise you have to basically shut OS 9 down anyway and then take it over.
Well, but you can do that. I mean, you can use the OS to load your resources and stuff into memory, and you can actually then pause the kernel and shut down the interrupts and take over the machine.
yeah, but at that point, why not just go right into a bare like RS-DOS and just go from there? Like, why even go into OS 9 in the first place?
Because as I mentioned earlier, RS-DOS, you essentially have access to one floppy disk of 35 tracks. OS 9 gives you access to larger floppies and hard drive space. You've got a lot more room to store your resources, etc.
Yeah, well, to each their own, I think.
When kernels are going.
Yeah, well, GDOS will do its own thing.
Yeah, and we've got things like the CoCo SDC now, which kind of break the storage barrier problems. We've got things like Ed Snyder's Media Streamers, where you can play streaming video clips off of the CoCo SDC. Some of the benefits of OS 9's storage capability are definitely noteworthy, but I believe those things are not impossible tasks to achieve now with things like the CoCo SDC and like the flash storage and things like that. So,
no, they're certainly not impossible to achieve. It just it involves writing all of your O&IO routines, etc.
Yeah, right.
Well, Steve, as you said earlier, CoCo users will never have a consensus.
Let's agree to disagree and move on. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's going to develop for what they like. There's enough products and people to have the things they enjoy.
It's no different than Windows versus Mac, Nintendo versus PlayStation. It's just personal preference and what you use it for.
Mm-hmm. So, Grant, how are you today, sir?
Doing pretty good. Yourself?
Not bad. Do you have a newbie question for us this week?
Yes, I do.
Well, let me get your infographic queued up here, because we are a professional outfit here. So I will go ahead and share the sound here so you guys can be wooed and awed by this little thing here. So hold on 1 second. It is time for Newbie Talk with Grant Leedy. Take it away, Grant. Now, wasn't that amazing?
That was so professional. I'm overwhelmed and speechless.
I think I just stopped sharing my whole screen. It's Newbie Talk with Grant Leedy.
Thanks, Steve. Well, the question I have today is about joysticks. Some of us, have a real CoCo, so we all know we want the deluxe joystick, and not the loosey-goosey's joystick. But if we use an emulator with our computer, or if we use the new CoCo Pi, what is a good joystick that will actually work decently to play games on the Coco Pi and on the emulators.
Anybody
That
want to
is
jump in
such-
on this?
Yeah, that's a very open-ended question, which it's so far I've tried the Xbox 360 controllers, the Xbox One, the PlayStation 4, and then there's a whole bunch of the NES and SNES style controllers that I have tested with RetroPie. And pretty much it comes down to what is personal preference. What kind of controller feels best in your hands? What do you want to use on those? Because at this point, pretty much all of them that I've tested work. So it's just a you. What do you want?
Well, let me
It also
just-
depends on the game you're playing too, because
Yeah.
some of them do want more loosey-goosey style, like Polaris or something like that.
Let me just interject one thing, though, too, because I have gone through a lot of trial and errors running controllers on emulators. And while MAME does a very good job of reading just about any controller you can throw at it, it will read it. And the thing about the CoCo, and I only know this from how I do this in BASIC. I don't know the hardware and assembly language version of this, but in BASIC, we could read a value in the joystick, and it's between 0 and 63. This is true for the horizontal and the vertical axis. With all of these non-CoCo controllers, you've got a really hard time reading the 0, coordinates of the top left-hand corners, the upper right. So your absolute corners are still very difficult to read. What MAME does a good job of is reading the actual 0 to 63. It reads if you want to do like a plus formation, it reads all of those values very analogously, but capturing the corners, I have not found anything outside of a real CoCo controller that actually lets you get those absolute corner areas. And depending on the game, that may or may not affect certain skill moves and stuff. You know.
Does MAME have a? I haven't really played with joysticks too much on MAME, but does it have any type of offset or neutrals that you can employ in the corners or in the center to give it a bit of leeway that I know like in Windows, in the actual setup itself, you can put in some neutrals, and I know like on the Xbox, the actual hardware, you can put in some neutrals if you want, if you have one of the higher end controllers. Just wondering, is that available in the emulators as well?
I haven't dug that deep into MAME about how you can tweak just the corner readings. I mean, it might be possible, but I couldn't speak to that.
Okay.
Neither can I.
Yeah.
I've bought a little dongle, a USB to Atari joystick dongle. It was fairly cheap, and I plugged that into my PC, and I run MAME or VCC, and I can then just plug in any of my Atari joysticks straight into it. That seems to work.
Now that's a Switch style joystick, so you basically this just on off.
Yeah, that's what I like the old
Right.
Wacos.
Okay,
But,
so
I
it wouldn't
mean,
work on certain games that require the full range, like a Polaris or Colorpede or
like double back or something like that. Yeah.
Oh well, no, but it may work. It's just I haven't got one of those other joysticks for the PC, of course. In most games I play, only want a switch style joystick anyway. You know, the left, right, up, down. Doesn't care about all the multiple values. I mean, honestly,
yeah.
playing.
So I guess it depends on what games you play, because I mean, some of the games like
it's on the
speed
games
controls.
and all that. But yeah, I find this little dongle's fine for most things.
I actually did an experiment where I took an Arduino Leonardo, which has the ability to use different personalities as far as its USB connection, and I wired a CoCo joystick to the Arduino Leonardo. And I actually had the CoCo joystick running on a PC is seen as a PC joystick. And maybe one of these days I'll get around to documenting that and publishing my code, because it's still not exactly, how should I say, user-friendly at this point. But I actually got it running.
Yeah. I've got one that was sent to me by Jason Lee Cyril out of Australia. He sent me a prototype one where it's a USB. It's got some type of microcontroller in there. It's got the two 6-pin DINs, and I can run 2 real CoCo joysticks over USB. Now, Darren Grant, who is Mr. Tandy out of UK, Tandy, the actual company Tandy, is working on a CoCo to USB joystick adapter that will hopefully be available. I think November is the slated release date. So if you wanted to use a real CoCo controller, we're supposed to be able to get our hands on one this year. That'll be interesting.
I didn't think Tandy existed anymore.
Yeah, Tandy Computer Corporation exists, and his name is Darren Grant, and he's in the UK. So yeah, Tandy still sells products. It's not Radio Shack, it's Tandy Computers. Yeah, so that's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, so getting back to your question, Grant, part of it depends on the game and the type of control feel that you want. One thing, because I have used MAME a little bit more, when you're able to bring up that menu with the tab key, you can remap joysticks. So if you take something like maybe an Xbox 360 controller that has an analog thumbstick and a D-pad, you might want to remap them for different types of games, where you could use the D-pad for the rigid 4-direction games and the analog one for the more loosey-goosey games, stuff like that, and just kind of change that on the fly.
Cool. We'll have to try that out. And like I said, I haven't really tried the CoCo Pi yet, so I've been playing with MAME as well. But as of right now, I can't find a joystick that is as good as the original deluxe joysticks on the real CoCo.
Yeah, so that would be neat to get a new one of those.
That is what the games were written to work with. You know, and that's why I did my little project where, and I guess we have these other projects going on to interface those joysticks to the color to the modern PCs, to MAME and stuff. It shouldn't be too hard to actually. I mean, all those joysticks is really 2 potentiometers and centering. So, I think I've seen a couple of arcade-style sticks that are for sale too, that you could build a box and stick them in there, but then you need a way to interface them to USB, which brings you back to either using an Arduino or a programmed microcontroller or something like that to hook to the USB connector.
Yeah, that just seems. It seems like that's a. I don't know, what do you want to say? An overly convoluted way. Whoop, hang on, sorry.
Yeah, we should be used to having to hack things at this point with the CoCo, right?
Well, actually, it's the way that a lot of these, joysticks that you have that are like PS2 joysticks or,
Simon's showing something
2.
off.
Okay. That's the way they actually, the joysticks for the PC work, is they actually have a little microcontroller in there that talks to USB port. And I'll let him talk a little bit while he was just holding in front of the camera there.
This stick was made back in the 80s by my dad.
Oh, wow.
Basically, like a child's stack blocks. Stack them on top of each other.
Okay.
And we've got an aluminium panel, and we've got a bit of wood underneath it, and a fire button. And what we have is a dual potentiometer.
Okay. So that's like the original Black Beauty stick right there.
Yeah, it's a dual potentiometer. I know that RS Components sells this kind of potentiometer.
That's cool. And John Strong has made one. John Strong's made like an arcade quality analog self-centering joystick with like arcade style buttons and stuff. He showed it off at CoCo Fest this year, but it was kind of like a prototype, but it's kind of like the best of both worlds. It plays like a deluxe joystick, and it's got 2 actual hardened round circle arcade buttons that you can mash on for fire buttons. And it's a really cool controller, but as far as I know, there's not that many in existence right now. Yeah, so as John Linville says, for certain things, your mileage may vary. When it comes to RetroPie and CoCo Pi, you can do Bluetooth pairings too. And so there's a handful of joysticks that are Bluetooth capable, that are wireless. And I know one of the ones that has been suggested by Ron Klein was the Wii U controller, where it looks like an Xbox 360 controller, but it's Bluetooth. I know David Ladd has been talking about the PlayStation 4 controller that's also Bluetooth, that handles this. How's PlayStation 4 controller been working for you on like MAME and CoCo stuff, David?
I have not tested the corners.
Okay.
But most of the stuff that I've just used it with seems to be fine, because it's usually just left, right, up, down. I think most of the issues I ever had with joysticks or stuff that the corners for me that were an issue were like stuff that was menu driven, like multi-view or M-shell or stuff where you had to get to that very both left and top right to where you needed to click on a menu or something that was on a screen for that used those full XY coordinates.
Like Color Max Deluxe or something like that too.
Yeah, most of the games that just use the X and Y to basically say, yes, you're moving right or left or up and down, I haven't had any problems with the corners because,
there you go.
Most of the games just usually, once you go past a threshold, the game works. It goes, oh, you're past this point? All right, we're moving.
Right. So it may only affect a handful of games that, like I had problems with the Contras trying to go diagonally on an Xbox controller. Had problems with Downland where you have to jump diagonally to get to other areas. Even Cashman sometimes I had some issues with using, PC-based controllers. So it might depend on the game itself.
Yeah. Now the controllers like the generic $5 or $10 USB NES and SNES controllers, those are instantly full value when you hit the D-pad.
Yeah, it's hard right, hard left.
I've never had any problems with those, but then again, then you get the nice little thumber cramp with the D-pads on the ends of your thumbs.
Well, another issue with too might be that the with the, like say an Xbox controller, when you're moving around the analog joystick per se, you're going to get, I think it's 0 through 256 on those. So maybe you're just not getting the resolution because it's so much more versus the 0 to 64 on the regular one. So I don't know. It's one of those things I guess, see if you can somehow tweak it that it would, be more precise about what you're picking.
Well, one of the things that I always ran into with that is it's not really the values that's the problem, because usually the emulators do a good job at doing the math to bring them to whatever the system is. It's usually how the hardware in the analog stick is designed, where the pots, when you try to get to the corner, the pot's not moving to the full extreme that needs to get into that very corner to get your value.
Right.
And so therefore that is where you kind of need a dead zone, where you can say, well, if you get to this point, then the rest after that is maximum. So that way you can try to adjust your dead zone so that way the corners are within that point. So that way you can scale that. Like what Barry was talking with the microcontrollers, with the analog stuff, there's with the Arduino IDE, there's a function called map, where you can adjust values from this value to this, become a new range, and then that way what you adjust it and what it becomes is two different things, and therefore you could adjust the values so that they become what you need. So that's just...
Meaning you can modify the output to what gets sent out to the other end of the USB port?
Well, yeah, basically.
Okay. So if it's not, basically if it's not seeing 0,0, you could tell it that it's that. And so the software sees the values it's looking for?
Mostly, yes.
Okay.
Well, back in the day when I used to code for the CoCo and other systems, I always put a little dead zone into the program to begin with, just because that corner issue did come up so much in so many joysticks that were out there.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about before, somehow setting that threshold. But
yeah,
I said, I haven't played with it yet to really figure it out. So.
Well, that was a good one. Grant, did we help you at all, or do we just completely muddy the water?
No, you definitely gave me some good ideas. I'll probably try to do the PS4. That'll probably be the best one to go with, it sounds like.
Something you can do as an experiment, too, is you can write like a little program in BASIC to read the joystick values of, joystick 0, joystick 1, and read those values and print them on the screen and see where it goes. And see which joysticks that you use give you the most range of readable motion,
Hey, speaking of the console controllers like the Xbox and the PS4 and stuff, are those all, I guess since they're Bluetooth now, they'll work on anything like Linux, whatever? Is that correct?
The PS4 controller, I've had it bound directly to the Bluetooth on the Raspberry Pi, and it worked. Now, Sony does put out an official USB dongle that will connect to it to give you all the other features that you won't get if you directly use the Bluetooth of the PlayStation 4 controller, like the headset connector for the audio, and just little things like that. So if you want easier access via that method, then it's probably better to get the USB dongle and then just pair the controller with that, and then you can just plug it into the Pi and then get your wireless that way. But as far as direct Bluetooth, yes, it will work.
I was just thinking about it as far as if you're trying to use it on Windows, or then you want to hook it up to your Raspberry Pi, or whatever configuration you're trying to use it in. I didn't want to get somebody into a controller that won't pair with a certain platform, I guess, that we typically would use for CoCo. That's all I was thinking about.
Well, with the PS4 controller, I have used the Bluetooth on the Mac, and then I plugged a USB cable into it for the Windows machine. That way I could actually keep it bound to the Mac and not have to keep repairing. Because both the USB port stays active, so it works as both a USB controller and Bluetooth.
Right.
So
yeah. I mean,
you don't.
Just saying that with an Xbox controller, you could USB that to, say, the Raspberry Pi, and it should work fine. I was thinking more of the wireless aspect of it, but.
Yeah, for your information too, Xbox right now is not Bluetooth. Maybe some of the newer ones are, but your standard Xbox 360s and Xbox One's controllers, they are 2.4 gigahertz wireless, but it's its own thing. It's not Bluetooth.
Yeah, well, I was looking into that, Steve. You're right. The 360 controllers are a no-go unless you have the little dongle for them. They do make a dongle you can buy back in the day.
The wireless receiver, yeah.
Yeah, but the Xbox One's a newer style where it's hard to explain without showing it, but there's a plate on the back. The older ones have like a raised plate where the box button is. The newer ones flat. Those ones are Bluetooth, no Bluetooth directly to a Windows.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I think if you have one of those, it may Bluetooth to the other one. That's why I was wondering if anybody tried it or not.
Yeah.
I have not. I normally just use my controllers via USB because I'm too cheap to buy the batteries to keep the Xbox One.
Yeah, you do go through batteries. There's no doubt about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then even getting battery packs that are worth a darn for these, for the Xbox One controllers anyway.
Yeah, I
expensive, so it's.
I just go to I just use AA's now. So, but
that reminds me of the old Dicom light phaser. 'Cause that thing went through 9-volt batteries like crazy if you left it on.
Yeah.
Have we beat this one to death for you, Grant?
Yeah, I think we're good. I think we would starting to go down a rabbit hole, as David would say.
All right, well, let's take a quick commercial break, and then we'll come back. And, David, you want to do your tech talk after this, and we'll talk about the CoCo SDC DOS and anything else that's been going on the list this week?
Sure. I need to get a quick drink refill, so
you go
while
do
you're
that.
Doing the commercial, I'll go do that.
I'll go run a couple.
Then we'll go through another rabbit hole.
Yeah, I'll run a couple of commercials. So if everybody wants to take a quick potty break, including those watching live, I'll run maybe about a minute and a half worth of commercials to give us all a chance to take a quick break. Okay.
You're the man.
We'll be back.
Are you ready? For the forest of doom.
At Gsoft, we make games for the TRS-80 color computer, TRS-80 MC10, and Dragon computers. Our basic games cover the range of genres from arcade, to text adventures, to simulations, to 3D dungeon crawls. This is our latest puzzle game from Japan, Fruit Panic. So come on and drop by our website and download our latest games.
Hey guys, Original Gamer Stevie Stroh here, and if you're listening to CoCoTALK, chances are you're interested in the color computer. If you'd like to find out more about the color computer, then visit my CoCo links page at imacoconut.com. There you will find communities, podcasts, YouTube channels, project sites, blog sites, hardware, software, buy, sell, trade, you name it. So for all things color computer, visit imacoconut.com. That's I-M-A, coconut.com, and tell them the Original Gamer Stevie Stroh sent you. Hey guys, Stevie Stroh here, and if you're a fan of vintage computing and retro gaming, you're going to love our retro swag shop at 8bit256.com, featuring hand-drawn custom designs and pixel art by Instagram artist Joel M. Adams. We've got the brand new official CoCoTALK t-shirt, I'm a Coconut t-shirt, and all kinds of other cool video game and arcade-related artwork. Check out 8bit256.com for all your retro swag needs today.
Something new is coming.
Tandy Assembly. Tandy Assembly is about Radio Shack and Tandy computers.
Tandy Assembly is about interacting.
Tandy Assembly is about people.
Tandy Assembly is about fun.
The first gathering of its kind.
Computers of the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
All Radio Shack and Tandy makes and models.
Join us. Don't miss Tandy Assembly.
In Chillicothe, Ohio.
October 7th and 8th.
Whether you're near or far.
Tandy Assembly is for everyone.
Visit our webpage at www.tandyassembly.com.
Tandy Assembly.
Willing to take you.
All right. Sorry about that. We are back. I'm not sure if David's back yet, but I'm back.
Yes, I'm here.
David's back. We are all back. Are we ready? Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Well, just going to say, Steve, that actually you ran your commercials where there was no audio, so we just kind of made up stuff.
Oh, well, I had you guys muted, so nobody could hear you.
Oh, well.
That probably would have been good.
All the magic's gone. Oh, well.
All the magic is gone. Sorry about that.
Yeah, and the audio was working on the YouTube channel because I checked, so there was audio there.
The audio of you guys was coming through, you're saying?
No. They were
saying
of
the
since
commercials.
We couldn't hear it.
You couldn't hear it, but YouTube could, yeah. All right.
Okay.
Let me make sure I'm sharing system sound. I am, because this is important. We got to hear this little infographic thing here for David and Curtis's tech talk. All right, hold on. Be prepared to be wowed here, people.
It's time for Tech Talk with David Ladd and Curtis Boyle. Take it away, tech dudes.
There you go. Nothing but the best here on this quality program that we're running here, folks.
Yeah, it sounds like the speech sound pack was going through puberty there, so his voice was cracking a bit.
So it is time for Tech Talk with David Ladd and Curtis Boyle. And what do we want to start with first, David?
All right. Well, one of the things that I happened to see, which was Ron's post about the floppy issues that he was having with the CoCo SDC, where the drive motors weren't shutting off. And when I saw that, I was like, yeah, it's just not switching back to the floppy drive to send the command to shut off the drive motors. So it wasn't a major deal. It was just basically the software had to tell the multi-pack to switch to the floppy controller, shut off the drives, and then switch back. So thankfully, another gentleman on the CoCo list had posted that he was having that problem too, and Darren Atkinson, who does the firmware and designed the CoCo SDC to start with, he saw that post and he updated SDC DOS to correct for that issue. So it's fixed.
And that's version 1.5 now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that thing was pretty much fixed the same day that Darren saw the post. So he's obviously actively watching what's going on and actively addressing any concerns that come up, which is nice.
Yes. Darren's been very good about anything that comes up when someone finds an issue. He starts researching it, because like an issue I ran into, was it, Curtis, now been 3 or 4 months ago? When was that we were doing all that 20-sector format stuff? So
yeah, it wasn't too long ago, but yeah, a while ago.
So, but yeah, Darren, first he had to try to replicate the issue I was having because of the fact that it was technically going too fast in the floppy emulation. For the CoCo was going too fast for what he was expecting, and he had to do some tweaks. And he fixed the issue that I was having, which most people wouldn't be running it in that way, because most people, if they're running OS 9 in native mode at the 1.78 megahertz, you had to have all these ducks in a row to break it. And of course, you know me, finding things to break.
Yeah, I have to say Darren's really good. He fixes bugs and acknowledges them really quick. He also adds new features sometimes when they're requested. I think, was it Ed that requested the streamed I/O that he's using on the video players and stuff? I mean, Darren added that. Now that can be used by anybody, so it's nice having that kind of support.
Definitely.
I wish he would publish the source to SDC DOS. I would love to go through there. I'm sure I'd find that source code very useful to look at, especially for my SDC utility I wrote for OS 9 and some of the other stuff and some of the problems I'm trying to figure out to get certain things to work there.
Have you tried contacting him directly, or just to see if you'd...
I think I sent him an email. I don't think I ever... Maybe my spam filter ate a reply, but I never saw a reply back.
Because I know he's answered some queries of mine. I haven't talked to him in a couple months, but I had some questions on it too, and he was pretty quick answering me back. So maybe he did get eaten by spam.
It's not like I got a response back saying no, go away. It's just probably the mail got lost somewhere or something. I just wish that was.
Your bird ate it.
Maybe the bird ate it. Yeah.
It's always a possibility.
I'd like to know about this OS 9 utility you're talking about for STC. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, I wrote it based on some earlier utilities. Basically took and basically wrote a utility called SDC. And what SDC does is you can use it to mount and unmount disks under OS 9. You can use it to erase files off of the card. You can do all kinds of stuff that you can't. Some of it you can't even do with SDC DOS. That's calling functions in the controller. The only thing I don't have working yet is the rename. I haven't quite figured out the. I understand it's basically just a zero delimited thing of 2 file names I need to pass in one of the arguments, but I haven't taken the time really to sit down and get that working yet.
Can you drop a text file onto a disk, like a basic 09 text file?
Well, you do that every time you use the controller. I'm not quite understanding what you're asking there.
Well, if I was to use Notepad or something.
You're saying to write a raw text file onto the SDC.
Yeah, into an OS 9 formatted disk, yeah.
Well, hold on. To write it into an OS 9 formatted disk, you don't need to use SDC utility. You just open the file and write the file. So again, what are you trying?
Are you talking about something like an LW tool at this point, Bruce, where you can take a file from a PC and drag it to a disk image?
I think that's what I'm talking about. Is that where
that sounds like the tool shed or something like that, right?
Yeah, tool shed does that.
Yeah. What this thing does is it allows you to control the SDC from mounting and unmounting disk images, deleting disk images, creating new disk images. All the stuff that you can do from SDC DOS, you can do with this using Nitrous 9.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think you just summarized it there. All those command line utilities you could use to mount and create images and stuff that are exclusive right now to SDC DOS in Disk Extended Color Basic mode. You want to replicate those to run in OS 9.
And I have plus some extra ones too.
Right.
So I guess I've got a separate question for an appropriate moment then.
Go ahead. This is Tech Talk.
Okay. Well, I don't know if this is techie enough, but so I'm, I can edit a file using Notepad or something. And what is this utility called? Hang on here. The CoCo disk util, whatever, whoever made that, I can edit, RS-DOS disks. So I can open up a Notepad and use search and replace and all that kind of stuff. But of course, if I try and do that with a disk that's formatted under OS 9, it blows up. So I'm looking for some cheap and easy way to edit basic 09 files and stick them onto an OS 9 disk outside of the CoCo itself.
Well, there's a few things that do that. I guess we have two people answering at the same time. I'll let the other person go first.
Unless that was an echo.
Yeah, no, it wasn't an echo. We literally started at the same time. All right. So as far as utilities go, there's the tool shed, but that's all command line driven. There's another gentleman that has a UI utility, but I don't know if that actually works with the OS 9 stuff or not. And what was the utility that you was going to bring up, Barry?
I was going to bring up the command line utilities, which really aren't that hard to use. Is basically you've got the tool shed stuff, which is you do OS 9 space, and you can do dir, copy, whatnot. There's also MAME or MES comes with something called IMG tool, and IMG tool has a command line interface, allows you to copy a file onto or off of an OS 9 disk.
Yeah, IMG tool is a bit harder to use, I would say, but
well, not really. Is IMG tool space? Well, the thing is, IMG tool has so many formats. So what part of the command line is you have to specify CoCo's the format, which is CoCo_OS9_OS9, tells it that you're writing an OS 9 disk for the CoCo in OS 9 format. So so you just have to tell it, hey, you're working with OS 9 format on a CoCo, and then
there's also the double image tool. You can pull it. I think Simon has on his website, on his area, that you can pull that down and actually do it graphically as well.
It's a Windows UI for image tool.
Right.
I think there's a graphic front end for the MAME tool also.
Talking about.
So can I ask a dumb question? Can OS 9 read an RS-DOS disk?
Yes.
Yes. There's a tool that comes
RS-DOS.
in the that's in there, that's RS-DOS. There's even one for PC DOS.
Yep.
So if you actually had a real floppy drive hooked up to your CoCo, you could do PC DOS, your /D1 or D0, whatever the hell your floppy drive is that you're using, and get a directory, and then you could copy files using that utility. I was using that or a version of it back in the early 90s when I first got my PC to move files between the CoCo and the PC.
I still use it for that purpose, actually.
Yeah, I think the issue here is it's all command line stuff, and I think for the newbies they probably appreciate like some sort of a GUI interface or something to drag and drop files. So there's lots of ways to skin the cat, but there's just nothing that the cat likes.
If I can make a suggestion, has anyone tried EmuDisk? Because that does it.
EmuDisk, he's working on it again, which I'm really glad to hear, because on OS 9 images especially, I found it buggy. It would corrupt them. It would screw up. It didn't work too well for me. Even on RS-DOS, I had a few times where it totally corrupted the image instead, so it was buggy. But it sounds like he's working on it again. If he gets that finished, it's super easy to use.
I just did it now. I just ran it now, opened a OS 9 disk, and I've pulled out a text file.
No, it did work occasionally. It actually worked more than half the time, but it would not always work, and I lost a couple files that way, so I got a bit leery about using it.
we're going to get him on CoCoTALK in the near future too, hopefully in conjunction with the updated release of that. So that'll be cool.
Now I do want to say, for those people that are used to Linux, the Toolshed project does have an extra feature called CoCo Fuse. Now I don't know much about the whole Fuse thing that's on Linux, but it allows you to mount a file system, and of course with how Linux works, you can mount a file system or drive or whatever to a specific directory that you're working in. Then everything under that directory is actually what's on that volume. Well, with CoCo Fuse, you can actually mount an OS9 disk image, and then once you go into the volume, it's just like the rest of your operating system. You can go in with your File Explorer, copy files in, copy files out, directly edit them in your editor, and then once you're done, then you unmount the volume, and it's done. So it's something that I've been using for the last couple weeks, just playing around with, and I'm like, yeah, this is another motivation for me to move to Linux more, because there's some of this stuff is just, Microsoft, why can't you do this crap?
The sad thing is that OS 10 used to have Fuse too. I used to use it for mounting NTFS disks and stuff for reading and writing. Worked great, but as far as I know, I think that doesn't work anymore. Because you could have, if you had the CoCo translation, it should have worked fine too.
It can be persuaded to work on the modern version, but with great difficulty.
Yeah, and then now with the new OS 10 coming out with a whole new file system, I'm imagining that's breaking again.
Yeah. I should point out that Jim Brain is here. And Jim, are you short on time by any chance?
No, I'm not. That's fine.
Okay, because I thought maybe Jim would help us talk about the mailing list announcement about some of these new not new, but newly released circuit board designs and things like that. We've got a hardware expert in our midst as well. So Bruce, I don't know if you got all the answers you were looking for. It doesn't seem like there's a one-stop shop just yet to get a text file from your modern computer to an OS 9 disk. Are we close, or is EMU disk the closest thing if it worked?
Last time I used EMU disk, it worked reasonably well. I don't usually use a Windows, and I had forgotten about that. But that's probably a good solution if it's working stably. It's probably a good solution for Windows.
If someone could throw the link for W image, the GUI for the image tools, that'd be worth looking at. I think Simon, if you throw that up there, I'd take a look at that probably. Of course, I'm scared of using something that somebody says might not always work.
So you don't use Windows, I take it.
I'm running a Mac right now.
Us Microsoft guys are used to walking down that
blue screen. It's a way of life.
Be aware that the image only works on Windows.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I've got Windows stuff here I can run it on too. Yeah.
Or there's always wine.
I prefer beer.
I tried that. Many things work under wine. EMU disk was not cooperating for me. I may give that another shot and see if I can create a wine bottle of it, though.
I was just going to ask if you were whining about wine. But.
Yeah.
Maybe he's just drinking too much.
It's like saying mess is a mess. Jim,
I did the wine bottle for VCC, which a lot of people have downloaded, I know, and used on their Mac. Yeah,
I've been running it too.
And then there's one other thing that Ron Klein had brought up in regards to MAME, which, of course, guess what that involves? Floppy disk images. So Ron was doing some testing and found that MAME's disk access was extremely slow trying to load the Donkey Kong remix off of the disk images. And so I decided to do some testing of my own. And yeah, at 2 minutes and 15 seconds, that would be slow. And then I started doing some looking. Now I decided to do what they call an MFM-based disk image, which MAME emulates, what is it, this HXC floppy disk emulation for the MFM disk images that are used in the HXC floppy emulator. But when I created an MFM disk image and used Disk Basic to format it, and then I backed up the Donkey Kong remix to it, the load time using that disk image was 42.78 seconds. So the way MAME reads in these JVC disk images, which is just basically a raw sector dump of the floppy disks that everybody's used to using, its implementation of reading those disk images into memory is slow. So as of right now, there's no easy fix for that, because I looked at the source code. The MAME developers are going to have to do some more work for their floppy stuff for how they import those disk images. But that's all the other news I have right now.
I wonder if it's doing something like converting the JVC sector format to, have to add the extra information that format doesn't have before it actually tries to read it, so it can emulate the floppy controller.
MAME internally actually builds or uses an actual MFM-based internal memory structure. So it's actually emulating a floppy disk as if it's actually a floppy disk. It stores the track information, the CRCs, the whole 9 yards. So basically when it does the JVC import, it's just doing a one-to-one interleave or sector skip, whatever you want to call it, because different manuals have it listed different ways. So that is the problem. It's a one-to-one interleave, and thus Disk Basic, when you try to read stuff in, the timing is not right. So
then all you got to do is change it where it's translating the interleave to have it handle the interleave differently by default.
Yeah, but see, none of their routines anywhere for any of the systems that handle that, they have no option for an interleave anywhere. So that's why I said for a lot of these systems that the developers that are not used to how these technologies worked, like for instance the CoCo, the default Disk Basic interleave, I believe, is 4. For OS 9, the optimal on the CoCo 3 was an interleave of 3, and when you started doing things like crystal overclocking and use the no-halt controllers, as Curtis mentioned in a previous group chats, 2 was what was normally used. But in this particular instance, I think each machine, all these different floppy disk routines that pass the information from one routine to the next, they should have an extra variable that gets passed down that says this is the preferred interleave that should be used for this, machine. So that way when it imports these non-MFM based disk images, it can go, okay, well, this is what the default for this machine would be, create the disk image this way in memory, and then it should fix that. And especially for other systems that would use the same technology, having that interleave variable would help all of the machines, not just the CoCo, but all of them, because then they'd have this variable for what was normal for each machine. But it's just that mechanic's not there. So
now I have a question. The DMK format actually supports all that because it would have the track and sector numbers embedded in the header part of the sectors.
Right, and
so
MAME
Does MAME know? And MAME, I would assume, knows that if you read a raw disk image and it's telling it, sector 1's here, 3 more sectors later is sector 2.
Right. It's because it's loading an MFM-based disk image in its MFM system. Because, like I said, I did this testing with the MFM format that they support for that's both read and write, which is the HXC floppy emulation stuff. That's the only one that says MFM in the category, so that's the only one I used. But MAME, even though that when you create a disk image, it doesn't do SDF, it doesn't support DMK for writing. So you can't create disk images that way. You can read DMKs, but you can't write to them.
Okay.
So that is one of the reasons why right now it would be nice if the developers would add in, like for instance, the SDF format that's used on the CoCo SDC, because then and then that same format, if the VCC people, whenever they return from hiatus, if they could also then add that same SDF support, because then we could move
rule them all.
Yes.
Yes, that would be nice.
Yes.
Because as far as it stands right now, the CoCo SDC only supports 18 sectors per track for the JVC disk images. And of course, JVC was originally from Jeff Vavasur's color computer emulators, hence why it's JVC. So VCC and Jeff Vavasource has no problem with multi-sector per track JVC disk images. Now, the CoCo in
Can you guys just wake me up when he's done talking? Sorry, David, couldn't resist.
Yeah, I know.
I also think that MAME, there's some headers in the JVC that MAME ignores some of the header information too.
Yes, it also does that because the fact that because since it builds the physical real MFM track in memory, they use the specs that are listed in the Western Digital 1770X documents. And thus, that's why we're still also locked in at 18 sectors in MAME, where technically on a real floppy disk controller on the CoCo, Bill Noble, Curtis can also verify this, and I have done this on a real CoCo with real floppies, formatting floppies at 20 sectors. So it's just something that...
Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah, and so it's something that just because it's locked in stone in the spec doesn't mean that you can flex that rule to get more sectors.
Yeah, I formatted a bunch of 20. I just never booted off of them, but I formatted a bunch of them.
Oh, and so have I. I did this on my real CoCo until my power supply died. Booting off of a 20 sector, which is also how I found a problem with the Toolshed project, because the fact that the whole geometry, you have to take in how the floppy works, because Disk Basic doesn't give a crap about how many sectors are on a disk. All it knows is sector 1 to 18. It's going to ask the controller, I want these sectors from sector 1 to sector 18 on track 34. I don't give a crap about anything else. Just give me these sectors only, controller, and that's it. And the controller does it.
I remember we chatted about this on the chat window. Yep.
Right. And OS 9 doesn't treat it that way. It has to, everything's based on logical sector numbers, and therefore it has to go from track 0, sector 1, which is called logical sector number 0, So that's where you find out all the geometry of the floppy disk, but OS 9 itself goes from sector number 0 to how big your volume is. And when you want to write something to a very, very specific location on a floppy disk, your utility has to actually look at the geometry and go, okay, I need to be on sector 1 to sector 18, and I need to write this boot track. But because of the fact that if you're doing completely what most people would say, holy crap, oddball crap, well, now you got to take how many tracks, how many sectors per track. This is one of the things that a lot of people just seem to just blow their minds on the sectors per track part. And then the heads. So you need to take 34 times sectors per track times heads. And that's where your boot track is going to go.
And there we have why the OS 9 Gen utility currently refuses to work.
Well, no, actually on the 20 sectors per track, it works perfectly fine. The problem that we're running into, like with hard disks on the CoCo...
Let me clarify that. Mine that I've been working on refuses to work.
Okay.
But, and on hard disks, it definitely refuses to work, because when you get more than two sides on the disk, it handles two sides okay, but when you get more than two heads, it blows its mind.
Right. And the other thing that you run into is when you're trying to get into 128 meg disk images. And also, I've been doing bizarre stuff. I've actually pushed the OS 9 volume all the way to 4 gig. And in order to get to the maximum capacity, you have to do some bizarre heads, bizarre sectors track, and someone's yawning, and bizarre cylinders. So you have things that with a hard disk image that's going to be completely unrealistic for how you would have to get it for disk, how the floppy disks are seen. And thus, that's with the CoCo SDC and DriveWire, is you basically have to override the geometry on those and use what would be considered for single-sided disks. You have to use what would be considered for the 18 sectors offset of what was it? Logical sector number starting of 612. So
everybody take notes. Make sure you're taking notes on this too, because there's going to be a quiz at the end of this. So
no, don't take notes. But it's a problem. What we're discussing is to put it in terms for the layman's on the call here. What we're discussing is a problem with the OS 9 Gen utility on Nitrous 9, where it does not write the boot track on anything other than a floppy disk in the proper location. And I have been looking at and discussing with David Ladd about various different ways to fix this. And I've actually started to code some stuff. And I'm hoping that one of these days soon, I'm hoping that I get something that works. And then I'll publish a new OS 9 Gen utility, which will actually be able to write a boot track to even, because CoCo actually had the same problem on actual hard disks too. You had to jump through flaming hoops to get an actual hard disk to boot using a Burke controller and stuff. And so I'm hoping to write an OS 9 Gen utility that will actually handle this correctly and actually be able to write a boot track onto a hard drive and have the CoCo boot from it.
Yes.
That would be interesting.
Yes, that is one of the reasons why RGB DOS and the way the boot module for the MFM, the IDE, and the SCSI was written the way it was to get your boot track and all that from your virtual floppy disk that was on a hard disk that was through RGB DOS or HDB DOS if you upgraded to that version. And that in itself is a whole ball and wax process, because you had to format a floppy disk with the hard disk based boot module on a real floppy disk. Then you had to go in, back that floppy disk up to your virtual floppy on the hard disk. Then you had to go through and do a link on it. And it was just a nightmare process, which on real OS 9 machines, didn't do it that way because your kernel was in ROM, period. The kernel was in ROM.
I beg your pardon. The color computer is a real OS 9 machine.
I'm gonna put the 30-second time limit on the conclusion of this topic for this week. So let's have our closing statements and our closing arguments, and we'll let the jury convene.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we'll just let that be for now because this could go on for hours.
It already has.
My quick summary would be is that this is a limitation of the way disk space was written because we didn't have hard drives back in the day. Tandy didn't think about it, and this is the consequence.
Whoa! There was hard drives. I had a hard drive from Tandy for several years of development.
No, I'm not saying that we didn't have hard drives, but you didn't boot directly off the hard drive, did you?
Yes, I did.
How did you do that did they have a special ROM?
Nope. I typed in DOS and it loaded in stuff and loaded up OS 9.
Yeah, back in the day you could have RGB DOS and you could boot directly off of the drive. But setting up that boot track and getting it written to the right place on the drive was a pain in the butt.
See, this is why I don't like OS 9. You spend all of your time configuring your system. And you have time to actually use your computer. See, that's the reason why you like OS 9, because you love configuring.
Oh, be quiet. I know you're just downloading my image that I already set up anyway, so.
All right, well, that's it. All right, well. OS 9 is awesome. OS 9 is awesome. We're gonna move
next
on.
Topic before Nick spends an hour on this.
Yeah. So it is. And David, thank you, and Barry too. The fact that you guys know what the heck you're talking about, because I grasp 2% of it. But not only do you know it as well as you do, but you're able to find the deficiencies in our emulators and things like that. At the end of the day, it is going to make for better things. We're going to find these problems that are going to fix the CoCo SDC. We're going to find these problems that will hopefully fix emulation and stuff like that. So it's great that there are people knowledgeable enough to know these things are not working, and hopefully we get the right powers that be to get them fixed. So we can
I've gone to the MAME team many times before and say, look, I don't care what the spec document says. I have the blasted computer here, and that's not the way it operates.
Right. So, cool. So Tech Talk was a winner this week, for sure. And Steve Powell in the chat was saying that this Techie Talk is making my teats hard. So I guess Steve Powell in the live chat was definitely enjoying.
He must be a configurator type of
guy. and Rick Adams joined us earlier. So welcome, Rick.
Hey, you got your CoCo 3 yet?
Still awake, Rick?
What was that?
I said, are you still awake after that talk?
Sort of. I'm sort of waking up now.
See, I was sleeping through the earlier part.
Yeah, we woke up Barry and we started talking about 20 sectors and boot stuff, huh?
Yep. Well, I missed a good part of that because I was busy repairing my LED sign, so it's all set to go tonight. So.
Oh, excellent! That's good news. And we did have Jim Brain on earlier, and Jim was going to show us some of the circuit board diagrams, but we don't have him on the call now, so we might just save that for
I saw some of those
for next week. Yeah, I was hoping to hear him speak about that because I certainly couldn't do that. But
I was looking at some of the stuff in there. It looks quite interesting. There's a satellite board upgrade diagram for the 26 3124 MPI packs. 2 versions of it actually, and assorted other stuff. I was looking. There's apparently some. Let's see here. I don't know. There was a bunch of circuit boards that were in there that look like there's a ROM pack board.
There's a 32 and 64K ROM pack for a CoCo 1 and 2, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, probably uses. I haven't looked at it in detail, but it probably uses a banking like the RoboCop and whatnot packs did.
Yeah, I don't want to. We'll probably save it for next week. But real quick, I'm just going to show you. This was the original thread that came up on the mailing list. So this message came in from Gene Heskett, and it was published in the mailing list this morning or just before 10 a.m. And he says, do any of you recall prolific young CoCo hardware designer named John Turner Jr.? Or some such from 5 years ago. So apparently John was working on a bunch of projects, was going to release them to the public domain, gave them to Gene, and Gene promptly sat on them for 5 years. But Gene now has all of these documents that he's now releasing to the public domain, and a lot of them happen to be circuit board diagrams and other things. And Jim Brain was going to speak to us on this, and I guess we lost him, or he had to go finish doing some things. So that was
fell asleep.
Yeah. So that was kind of the breaking news today. And rather than trying to talk about it, because I'm not going to be able to talk about it, we'll just mention that happened this week, and hopefully next week we'll be able to talk about it in a little bit more detail. And one of the things I gathered from that is that some of these designs now, maybe somebody like Ed Snyder can take those and run with them and do some things. Oh, he's actually back. Jim Brain is back. Speak of the devil. Jim, are you with us? I'm getting this in from my producer. Apparently there are some issues with the satellite comlink. Hopefully Jim will chime in audibly here in just a minute. But yeah, it'd be nice to see some of these things, because he was posting some of the pictures of the circuit boards, and they look nice and pretty. All right, so while we're waiting on to see if Jim is going to chime in, how about we do this? How about let's take a quick look at the Tandy Assembly website, and let's see what's new and exciting over here. For those of you not aware, Tandy Assembly is our next gathering of the collective, and it's going to be October 7th and 8th in Chillicothe, Ohio. And so we're going to see what's new on the speaker lineup. It's probably similarly the same. So yeah, we still have our keynote speakers of Scott Adams of Adventure International, Don French of the TRS-80, Origin Story, Lance Michaelis, and then now Rick Adams, another keynote speaker. So that has not changed from last week. Our other speakers will include John Linville, Keeping CoCo in the Game, Peter Satinsky, History of the TRS-80 Model 2 line, myself, Brendan Donahue talking about hacking Extended Color Basic to use 64 columns, and Randy Kindig talking about Tandy's portable computers through the years. So that should be interesting how those are all going to be broken down. Who do we have for exhibitors? Well, we have Mike Rowan. We have Richard Lorbieski of Boisentech. We have Peter and Alex Zatinsky. Cloud9, Mark Marlette, maker of many fine CoCo products. Peter Bartlett and Malcolm Ramey. Randy Kindig will be an exhibitor. Retro Innovations, Jim Brain himself will be there. Ian Maverick coming down from Australia. Ian Maverick, The Right Stuff, and Ian makes all kinds of TRS-80 products for both the CoCo as well as the Model 1, 3, and 4 series. Brendan Donahue and his CoCo VGA project. Alan Hightower with 5 different models of Tandy 1000 series computers, PC compatibles. John Linville. Evan Wright, Scott Adams, Mike Brandt, Rick Adams, and Brett Gordon are some of our exhibitors right now who will be showing things off there. And so yeah, Tandy Assembly is definitely shaping up. I'm looking forward to the next episode of the CoCo Crew podcast. We've only got 4 days left this month, so hopefully they're hard at work, editing that down, and hopefully we'll have a new CoCo Crew podcast to hear shortly, and maybe we'll hear some more updates on Tandy Assembly. Jim, are you with us? Jim Brain? Okay. Well, we'll wait and see about that. Okay, so if we don't hear... Oh, Jim, are you here?
No, that was me. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Rick, you got anything to update us on anything you're working on besides you mentioned you're going to do an LED display. For those not familiar, we've showed this off in an interview we did with Rick last year, and he's got some stuff on YouTube where he has a Raspberry Pi control all these lights, and it's a very nice, vibrant display. And I guess you were working on something like that for CoCo Fest as well, so you have a cool custom LED display for your exhibitor area.
Yep, that's what I got to work on next, is fabricating that, which is always lots of fun. But first thing I have to do is I have to paint a bunch of stuff to make it look pretty, and I'm not really crazy about painting, but we'll get that done. It was kind of fun. My sign that I have in the window now was malfunctioning. The website that I was getting weather data from changed their format, so all of a sudden it threw all of my script off that was extracting the data. And so all of a sudden I was showing the entire neighborhood all kinds of JavaScript code was scrolling by my window.
Okay, well, it's probably not as nice as the weather, but I guess
no.
Probably
So
more
I figured
predictable in the weather.
Especially in Minnesota.
Minnesota. All right, so
Minnesota, that's right.
Jim Brain's saying he's having some internet issues. We can see his face on the screen, but we can't hear him. All right. So that's cool, and we're definitely looking forward to hearing you talk about bomb threat. I have to make sure I keep my bomb titles clear. We've got bomb squad and bomb threat. So looking forward to seeing and hearing the latest on that.
It contains no actual bombs or threats. Hello, Homeland Security. Love you guys. Keep up the good work.
Roger that. So I know, and Ciaran is with us now. Ciaran, are you there? Again, we see people here, but we're not hearing them.
Yes,
so,
hello.
You're there. Hey, Ciaran, how are you?
I'm fine. I was muted 2 ways. So
Okay.
It took me a while to get back into it.
Okay.
Oops.
The double mute. All right. So we've addressed that issue.
Not the dreaded double mute.
Was the double mute issue easier to resolve than a Nitrous 9 boot sector?
Oh, don't get it started again, Steve.
Not even close.
So
Kurt has to listen to me going on that.
What's new and exciting with you in Land of the Queen?
Oh, well, the land itself carries on going crazy, but new with me, I guess I'm trying to resist doing some user interface work.
By trying, you mean not succeeding, or?
Succeeding quite well because it involves using Glade. Have you ever used Glade?
Can't say I have.
No.
Except for the air freshener.
Well, it's a GTK plus UI design tool. It doesn't matter. I don't like the way tapes work in Xroar, basically.
Okay.
It's the way it currently operates is that it sort of behaves as though you had two completely different tape decks, and that you had the input line connected to one of them and the output line connected to another, and it's bugging me. But anyway, that's what's new. Carry on. I'll shut up.
Well, while David Ladd's worried about breaking and fixing virtual floppies, you'll be on the cassette front, making sure the world is safe for virtual cassette tapes too. So these are the important issues that somebody's got to tackle, folks, and that's awesome.
I think the last thing, David Ladd broke it, and I sat here and raised Cain with the MAME team and ended up, doing a fix for it.
Hey, Barry, by the way, don't have Donald Trump shut down our show, okay? Whatever you do.
Tell me about it. That ended up being some had to do with some silly Nazi protest site that was hosted on DreamHost that happened to be on the same web server group that we were on.
Yeah, so we lost the Color Computer Archive for a few hours during the day, and it's amazing how much traffic that generated on the mailing list and on Facebook. I can't get into the archive. What will I do?
Well, one of Rick Adams' sites, I think, was affected.
Yeah, because the whole hosting company was a denial of service attack that was affecting DNS and stuff.
Down,
yeah.
All of DreamHost went down.
Yeah.
It was a DDOS.
Yeah. Interesting stuff.
It was kind of well, we probably don't want to get into the politics of it. So maybe I
No, don't touch that with a 10-foot pole.
We're not going to get into. Yeah, we've already had to listen to.
That's a Nitrous 9 boot track scenario.
Yeah, exactly. So we already had to listen to Nitrous 9 for a while. So
yeah.
I'm not going to live that down, am I?
Nick Marentes, you've been awfully quiet.
Hey, report. Nothing positive anyway.
Nothing new in the Gunstar development area?
No, I've been too busy getting ready for the Apple Fest that I'm going to this week. So I've got all my stuff for presentation going. I tried to do a bit of OS 9, but that was dismal. So I Shut that one down quick.
If anybody wants to play with boot tracks, I have a practical suggestion to avoid pulling your hair out. Experiment with your boot tracks on a 35-track 18-sector floppy image. And that typically all the utilities will work there.
I was just going to mention, obviously, it's too late for David, but he's already pulled his hair out.
Curtis,
Wow.
Sorry,
you know
Dave.
where you can put that one.
Something about in your pipe and smoke it, or or where the sun don't shine.
But yeah, if you go and look at the OS 9 manual and you create a 35-track 18-sector floppy, and then you follow the instructions in the you'll be able to build a bootable floppy disk. And that bootable floppy disk, once it boots, you can put in the startup script to CHD to slash whatever for your hard drive device, and CHX to your execution folder, and that way you can experiment with all kinds of different boot setups, etc., without losing hair.
There you go.
Sounds
Maybe,
like fun.
is there any hair loss reversal that can be done by this if we speed it up? Oh, good times when we're talking CoCo. Anything else we want to talk about this week? Maybe we'll have a short show this week. It's only been roughly 2 hours. It's kind of short for us. I do want to say a couple of things. I do want to say that I am very thankful for the people who gather each week to do this show, because in the past 3 weeks I've had and it's actually a pleasure to the time it takes me to edit these, convert them to audio, listen to them, go through some cleanup and some modifications, and put them on podcast format. I'm hearing the shows for the second time and sometimes for the first time, and we got a lot of great people on this show, and there's a lot of great things to listen to, and I find myself being entertained and educated. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who's here now and everybody who's been here in the past. It's been a really interesting show. It's been an interesting journey for 23 weeks now. And if it was up to me to do a show, what the hell am I going to talk about for 2 hours that anybody's going to want to listen to? So we have everybody here, with the exception of David Ladd. Everybody here has something interesting to say. Yeah, David Ladd does too. But you know what I mean? But especially David Ladd, because the depth of technical knowledge he has, that's way beyond me. And so we get a nice cross section of topics and things to talk about and things to show off, and it's pretty, it's a lot more timely sometimes. We can talk about something that happened today, for example, like that email dropped today, and we can talk about it today. So it's been a fun ride for me, and so I just want to throw that out there. Thank you to all of you for doing this and continuing to do this, because I enjoy it.
And I would like to throw out a big thanks to Stevie for putting all the work and effort in getting all the episodes of the podcast up within, a 2-week span? 3 weeks span?
It's been a total of 3 weeks, yeah. 3 weeks total.
But that was an enormous amount of effort to go through how many 2- and 3-hour episodes and to get that all cleaned up and uploaded. So that was a huge undertaking on your part. And I think we need to thank you for that, too.
Oh, well, good. You're welcome. And hopefully people will enjoy that. And I never thought anybody was going to watch this show, and we get 200 people watching it. Now we have people listening to it. So, yeah, it's been interesting that people consume this. So,
Steve?
Yeah.
You might want to check out Simon's stuff.
Yep.
Check out Simon's stuff. What do you mean?
Simon's been working on stuff this week.
Oh, do we have more stuff to show off now?
Give him the mic.
Look at the chat.
Look at the chat. I'm looking at the chat. Okay. Which chat now? CoCoTALK chat or the chat that we're in right now?
The text chat for the channel we're currently talking in.
Okay. Do you have a CoCo or an EMU handy, Stevie Stroh? Maybe we should just show part of the demo I'm working on for assembly. Yes, I do.
Okay, how do I send it to you?
Okay. Send it to me as a disk image, and you can put it in the Skype chat, and that's fine, and I'll fire it up.
Yeah, okay. How do I do that? Sorry to be stupid.
How do you? Well, you can just drag and drop it into the Skype chat, I think, if you have a disk image. All right. So while he's doing that, I will run a commercial. Simon Jonassen's going to send us a disk image, and we're going to look at some more of his madness here on a CoCo in just a moment. So don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be back in 2 and 2. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me. It's Original Gamer Stevie Stroh. You know, gameplay goodness. To get your very own
And I presume we are
gameplay
now
goodness
muted for
DVDs
commercials.
featuring color computer games played by the Original Gamer Stevie Stroh, visit 8bit256.com and grab yourself a CoCo Gaming DVD today. That's 8bit256.com for all of your gameplay goodness needs.
Where can you catch all the latest news and information about the Tandy color computer and compatibles? Oh yeah, I'm talking about the CoCo Crew podcast. Dig it each month. Join John, Neil, and Mike as they lay down the latest news and information about the Radio Shack Tandy color computer and compatibles. Groove to interviews, tech segments, and discussions all about the Radio Shack Tandy color computer. Strut your fine self over to www.cococrew.org and start listening today. The CoCo Crew Podcast. Keeping it CoCo, dig?
Hey guys, Original Gamer Stevie Stroh here, and when you're done with CoCoTALK, if you gotta have more cowbell, then head on over to my YouTube channel for your share of gameplay goodness. There you will find over 1,300 family-friendly gameplay videos. Everything from the old school to the next gen, and over 200 color computer gameplay videos, as well as interviews and replays of CoCo. Alright, I think we're back. Give me 2 seconds to see if I can get my CoCo up and running. I just had to manipulate files across multiple things here. Well, let's give this a shot. Okay,
Hey,
so
guys.
I've got my CoCo 3 up. Yes, Rick.
I am not seeing Steve's desktop at all. Is there something special I need to do here?
Neither am I.
Neither am I.
I'm just seeing the group of people on mine.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about I reshare?
That's much
There you
better.
go.
Much better.
Yeah, now I see it.
Yeah, the YouTube stream has been fine. I was actually watching on there. It's time delayed, but
Super.
Okay, I've got the CoCo up, and then Simon just sent me this disk image here that's called Secret. It's a secret. Okay, don't tell anybody. It's a secret.
Oh, baby.
So, what do I run here first? Tests, 1-bit CoCo, or VDCB?
If you want to see the demo where I was running BASIC with the music, just run on 1-bit CoCo bin.
Okay.
That's the one that you had on Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to turn it up.
I just got BASIC running with the music at the same time.
Yeah, this is running on a real CoCo. Music playing in the background. The cursor is blinking a little bit slower.
Actually, a lot slower.
Okay, we're getting.
We lost the music.
I have to turn off the music because it's causing some feedback. So, but yeah, so this is your 1-bit music player.
Yes, it is.
Sounds very SID-like.
I got it working with BASIC for someone else, and I was
Okay.
actually using fast poke in the borders to bring down the time.
Okay, well I could do a fast poke right now. This is a CoCo 3.
It's using fast poke by itself.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, in the borders, in the it's running HSync and using it in the horizontal borders. But if you want the impact one, just run tests. You probably have to reset that because it was an IRQ.
Yeah, I'm probably going to have to... I'm going to do this manually, I think, where I'm going to just... Instead of doing it through the SDC Explorer, which is right now actually going to be a little bit of a handicap to me, I'm going to just exit out of here and just mount the disk manually. All right, so let's do a dir minus And it was called secret disk, so I said drive 0, secret. So now we'll do a dir. All right, so I am in full control of the floppy, and I have no problems with sectors or anything here at this point. So what do I run here, Simon?
Test.
Tests. All right, now do I execute this?
Yes. Go ahead.
Ooh, Tandy Assembly. Look at that, ladies and gentlemen.
Woohoo.
Look at that. You got a nice graphical overlay here. You got this nice circuit board pattern, cool looking fonts, and a rotating cube.
Yes, and we have perspective, Ciaran.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see.
That is absolutely gorgeous.
We can rotate an arbitrary object as well.
Now I know what I'm running on any spare monitor I might have.
There's your screensaver.
Yeah, right?
Any object. Got to do a Cobra Mark 3.
Yeah, you can run that on the CoCo 2. It will work equally well.
Right. Well, I'm running it on a CoCo 3, but I haven't done the double speed poke, so this is running at the 0.89 megahertz, right?
Yeah, just if
and it looks like you're doing some geometry transforming here, so it's not always a cube. It's becoming trapezoidal or something here. So
optical illusion.
It's an illusion?
It's an optical illusion because you're looking at the back face.
Okay. I'm fooling you and you don't like it. It's an illusion. I'm fooling your eyes. There's nothing you can do about it.
you could solve that with hidden line removal. I'm going to run it back now.
Yeah, it is. It's really screwing with me. I think I'm going to stare away from my screen and see Jesus or something here in a minute. Really cool stuff.
This will run on a Dragon too, won't it?
Yes, it's right up.
Cool.
That's neat.
That font is rather impressive, I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
That reminds me of a Borg stuff.
How many sectors did this require for you to store, by the way?
Is this in OS 9?
How big is the code? The code's about 1.5K.
Wow, that's cool. I love it. I love the overlay. Now,
well, that's the thing is the vector draws make it a very, very simple data algorithm for the stuff. It doesn't take up much space. I remember there was a 2K game cartridge I was developing for Tandy back in the extreme early days, but they didn't want anything with vector draws, and so I stopped production on it. But I had stuff very similar to this playing on the CoCo 1.
Yeah, it's neat. I'm kind of, we've been talking about nostalgia a lot today. I'm kind of nostalgic for vector style stuff. It maybe wasn't as popular because we wanted things to look like sprites type games. But nowadays, I'm extremely nostalgic for vector stuff. I would love to see more new vector stuff on the CoCo.
Have you ever looked at a game for the CoCo called Varlock?
That's the chess game, right?
Yeah.
Not exactly.
Sort of battle chess, Archon style.
Yeah.
It's an Archon, but it's 3D Archon. It's and it uses a lot of vector graphics. My only thing I don't like about Varlock is I wish it was you could do a multiplayer or 2-player version.
Right. Hey, Jim, can you hear us? Jim Brain?
I can hear you.
Okay, so we don't lose you again. I want to go back to have you because I would like to have you shed some knowledge for us on these designs that were unveiled to the public today via the CoCo mailing list.
Okay, that's fine. Somebody will have to give a little prep on who this is. I can just tell you about the designs themselves. So maybe somebody who knows a little bit more about who the folks are can maybe chime in first.
Can anybody know the history? I know I read the person's name. I'll pull it up again from the list, but I guess this was somebody who was doing hardware in the past, and he kind of got out of hardware 5 years ago, and now, long last, his designs are being put in the public domain. I'll pull up his name again from my
John
original.
Turner Jr., I believe, and then Gene Heskett's the guy who's kind of releasing it now.
Yeah, John Turner Jr. was the person who did the hardware designs. It's being released by Gene Heskett. And
I see a domain there on the design says gimmechip.com.
Yeah, I tried looking for that domain name. It's being parked by somebody. It's not available for sale. I wanted to see if there was a site to say, oh, this is cool. Let's check out the website. And I went to the website, and the website, it just says, hey, if you would like to buy this, let us know. So somebody got the name and's got it parked.
Yeah, the domain is dead, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, well, anyway, what I know of it is that it's the son that they took somebody's designs, I think, and kind of improved them a little bit.
Okay.
To understand, and maybe some of the designs are are unique to this individual, and then, of course, this individual, this John Eric Turner Jr. Left the the community in 2012. Asked his father to try and get the stuff to Gene Heskett or get to somebody, and I think Gene was one of the contacts in the list. And so the John Turner Sr., I believe, is the one who wrote the information and put the files online and gave the link to Gene Heskett. And so Gene's put them up on his website, and I downloaded them this morning. Looks to me like there's about 5. Let's see. Probably I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 designs that he's created, and so I shared my screen. So if you want to,
we can see it. We're watching it. Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, so this design looks to me like a 32K. So probably would have been a CoCo 3 design. Hold on here.
If I'm reading that correctly there, Jim, it looks like you've got a bank selector there, so it selects the 32K bank.
Correct. Right here, you've got A15 high or A15 low. Right.
So what that is actually doing is if you go from A0 to A15 and you have A15 locked high or low, then you've got two 16K banks that are manually selectable.
Actually, no. You have 230, right? Because a 27512, which is what fits in this, is a 64K file, and so this is two 32K banks, and you can just decide which of the 32K banks is visible.
Oh, Yep, you're right. I stand corrected. So this is actually, although it says CoCo 2, this is actually a CoCo 3 then.
Yes. This is a. Well, I mean, you could use it in a CoCo. You can use it in a CoCo 1 or 2, but you would only get the upper 16K of the 32K bank.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's usable in all 3, but you'd only get a 16K bank switched cartridge, 32K of bank switch cartridge space on a CoCo 1 and 2, and you get 64K of bank switch cartridge space on a CoCo 3. So nothing. I mean, it doesn't look like there's anything terribly unique about this. You got the bank switch here, and you've got an auto start jumper right here, and then of course you got the EEPROM right there.
Basically, your basic cartridge ROM.
Correct. The only thing I was looking at looked a little interesting to me is the pins, the fingers for the edge connector are a little short. They probably are fine. I haven't printed one out and on paper and fit it into a slot to see what it is, or see whether they're long enough or not. The only concern I see right now for this particular cartridge is you'd probably have to have John, if John's still on. You'd have to have John design you a case, because there should be a hole about right here and a couple of holes about right here for the cartridge enclosure screws and the one screw that goes through the entire cartridge itself. And so those aren't present on this cartridge here. This is probably a version that he was going to run a PCB on and make sure it worked, and then maybe reposition things for the holes that need to go through it.
Gotcha.
So this is this one, and then let me bring up the other ones.
But these were designed like 5 years ago. So possibly for the time it was designed, was this a little bit more? I don't know if the word revolutionary is the word or not. But was this like a little bit more of a wow factor back then than it is now, or?
I think probably just for you, Steve.
It's your garden variety ROM carrier cartridge you put an EEPROM in it, you plug it into the cartridge port, and the computer reads the ROM.
Okay.
Useful, certainly useful. Nothing, out of the ordinary.
So just to give you an example, so here is a, hold on here, I'll get you. So this particular design here was designed in 2004. So this is a 2004 design, right? So this is something that was developed, 2008. This was a 2008, 2009 design. So that would have been about 3 years prior to this other design we just looked at.
And this is one of your creations.
Correct. This is a network card for a Commodore, but just to give you an idea of, you got an EEPROM here, and you got some switches and whatnot, and you got a surface mount chip on the bottom. So it's neither one of these I would consider to be really state of the art for the late 2000s or the early 2010s, but they're nice designs.
Okay.
So let's look at the second one. So there's a now this one says it's a 64K color cartridge, version 3, revision A. So this one also is it's a 63K or 64K, and it's got some interesting stuff over here. A11 you can set, A12 you can set. So I think what you can do here is what this allows you to do is it allows you to shift. Looks like A11, 12. So this would be every 32K bank, every 16K bank, every 8K bank, every 4K bank, and every 2K bank. So it looked like you could use this cartridge to select a specific 2K offset for a 32K chunk in the ROM. So you could set your ROM offset or your ROM base address anywhere within 2K of the 64K chip.
All manual, all with jumpers.
Correct. All manual, all with jumpers. I've never seen this before, so this one's probably a little bit interesting. In 2012, to your point, Steve, it probably wouldn't have been that earth-shattering, but for somebody who was doing development and wanting to, put a bunch of different images at different offsets let's say you had like 8K ROMs and you wanted to kind of put them at specific offsets in the cartridge, and you didn't mind doing some of this, putting jumpers on and whatnot, then that would have been an option for you to do some work.
If you wanted to do development now for a cartridge, sorry Jim, but I'm going to do a shameless plug here. I would get a CoCo flash and put your cartridge in there.
Yeah, I would say this is probably a little bit harder to do now than just software select a bank and flash your memory. And of course, this is an EEPROM based cartridge as well, so it has all the advantages and disadvantages of an EEPROM based cartridge.
Right. Now, those CoCo flashes, by any chance, would those be available at go4retro.com?
They would happen to be available, and they happen to be in stock. I know the guy that runs this show, and he just told me they're in stock.
Okay.
And I know the guy that wrote the software for them, and he says the software works.
Yep.
Go4retro.com for your
This
CoCo
show
flash.
brought to you by shamelessplugs.com.
That's right. That's right.
Hey, leave David's hair out of this.
That's right. Now this one is it looks like an MPI design, and this one's probably a more interesting design, primarily because it is, it's got a lot of chips on it.
Wow.
It's using 74F chips, which it'd be interesting to understand whether these designs actually made it into reality in some way, because 74F, the 74F series is F means fast, and so these chips operate very quickly, and so that's great, except they are very, very susceptible to ringing on the logic lines, and so you have to be very careful about that. And all this kind of messiness back here, I don't think would have been conducive to a 74F, but who knows? Maybe it was. I don't know. It looks like it was designed for two sizes of edge connector, female edge connector connectors. One with pins that were farther towards the middle, and ones that were farther towards the outside. It uses an ATX power supply for its power, so that's kind of interesting. Yep. It does have a GAL over here, which is kind of interesting because there's a whole bunch of these right here, these 367s. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. those were buffer chips to basically buffer the connections from the outbound only connections from the CoCo bus to the 4 slots here. The F245 is the same thing, but it's bidirectional, and so that would have been for the data bus, because the data bus is the only one that's bidirectional. And then this 07, the 07 is an open collector buffer, which I assume would be for certain signals like SLNB and IRQ and CART and stuff like that that are held high in the CoCo with a resistor, and you can only drag them low. So that might be that chip right there. And then it had a gal up at the top that did a lot of what in the original MPI would have been done with discrete logic. What I didn't have time to look at yet is it's got a 153 and a 74, and a 74 is a D flip-flop, which I don't really know what that's being used for, and I don't even know what a 153 is. So you can cart strap multiple cartridges. I assume you wouldn't want to do that. I assume you'd only want to hook one cartridge up to the cart line at any given time. So
not at all.
Really?
It's quite useful to strap multiple cartridges to the cart line, especially if you have multiple RS-232 ports. Because a cart line is an open, I believe open collector is what it is.
Oh,
basically.
okay.
So
yeah,
you're
right. I'm thinking CTS line. My apologies. You're right.
Yeah, we used that actually for our RS-232 packs at work. We strapped a bunch together because we were running 3-4 devices that actually had ports on them.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. I got my signals mixed up. It's CTS. I don't think you'd want to strap more of them than one together.
Right.
But what is interesting is that for the CTS line, I only see 2 switches, and for the SCS line, I only see 2 switches. So I gather that only the first 2 slots, or maybe only the first and last slot.
Either that, or he's doing cart select, and your switches are selecting the slot in binary.
Oh, good.
Yeah, 0 to 3 then. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then that might be what the 153 is. I'll have to go look up when the 153 is, or I guess there's some other things here. 368, 30 is like a logic chip. 367, like I said, is a one-way buffer. But these other ones, like 374, is a one-way buffer, or a latch. Sorry, and I don't even know what a 139 is a 2 of 4. So you're right. 139 is a 2 to 4 decoder. So that must have been what he did. So whoever did that gets a gold star. He did the CTS and SCS lines by binary.
Okay.
So anyway, this one's probably more interesting. Somebody had a little extra time and a little extra money on their hands. They might want to actually make a run of this board and see just how well it works out. I don't know. I don't have any ATX power supplies lying around, so I don't know. But the nice thing is, he did have the 16 V8 or the 22 V10 logic is here. So he's got the JED files and everything, so you could burn those if you had a GAL program.
What I didn't see in a lot of this, I was looking through these earlier, I didn't see, unfortunately, the schematics.
They're here. So here's the schematic for this one. So the schematic for the this is for the MPI, so it's spread over a bunch of
is that
pages.
an SCH file?
Correct. This is the SCH.
What file type is that? Because I wasn't able to read that.
It's these files are Eagle files, EagleCAD files, and SCH is schematic.
Okay.
So yeah, it looks like you guys are right. We would have found that from the schematic. So here's your 2 of 4, and here is the original Tandy 1404 PAL, or maybe used as well as a properly programmed 22 V10. So that's kind of neat that you could pop a GAL that you bought for a 3124 and use it in here, or you could use this. So that's why the 30's there, and that's why the GAL is there. So it uses the same exact equations that the original MPI used. So that's nice.
Sure.
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask if he's using the actual original MPI space gal, I wonder if the way that he's got the other chips laid out and the dip switches for selecting the startup for the CTS and the SES for the... I wonder if that would match how the actual switch on the front of the MPI works, is how the switch jumpers different connections together. I wonder if that's how that's emulating that as well.
So I don't remember if the actual.
Yeah,
I'd have to look at one of my packs.
I can show you the.
Let me just ask a quick dumb question, because you've mentioned the word gal 3 different times, and I only know that as a slang for a female. What is gal when it comes to electronics?
So that's cute. That's cute.
Small programmable logic chip. How about that?
Yeah. Originally there were PALs. So after there were, so to take a little history lesson, transistors were first the king, and then there were these things called medium scale integration. So that's when you talk about TTL chips, the 7400, the 7408, the 7410, those things. That was called medium scale integration. And then people said, well, those are great, but they're kind of predefined. You can't do anything about them. And so I can't remember who it was, Signetics or somebody came out with what they called a PAL, right? So it's cute, PAL. And it stood for Programmable Array Logic. So it had a big array in it, and you could program the array, and the array said these inputs get translated into these outputs using this kind of logic. And then PALs were kind of like EPROMs, because they had they didn't get erased the same way, but you had to use kind of high voltage to program them. And then later on, I can't remember who came out with GALs, but GALs were like PALs, but they didn't require such high voltage to program, and they had more capability. So for the same chipped footprint, so if it was used to be a 16-pin chip and in a PAL, then a GAL, you'd have the same 16-pin footprint, but you'd have more capability inside. The descendants of the PALs and the GALs is, as Barry indicated, it's programmable logic. So when you hear people talk about CPLDs, or the other day we talked about FPGAs, so CPLDs are like the children of GALs, and FPGAs are the grandchildren of GALs.
Okay.
And you could probably take one CPLD chip and replace all of the discrete chips on one of those board designs if you wanted to.
Yeah, you could definitely get rid of most of the stuff.
Okay.
Let me see if I can look real quick here at the schematic. But
was this included in the guys' files, or you just happen to have this?
No, I just happen to have it.
Okay.
I have one floating around here somewhere too, but
yeah, you download these things so you have them available all the time. But here is the schematic for the. Here's the schematic. So the schematic for the Tandy MPI had, you're right, David. It had the same kind of thing. So here is here's the switch right here. So you had a 4-position switch, was basically an encode. It was set up to be encoded in binary, and then that coded in that binary coding went through LS139 right here and another LS139 right here that would set which of these, which CTS line was going to be held low and which SCS line was going to be, or which SCS line was going to be connected and which CTS line was going to be connected.
Was this bad for business for them to publish these types of schematics where somebody could theoretically recreate the product, or?
I don't know. Back in the late 70s, well, even before that, but definitely until the mid 80s, I mean, everybody published schematics. It was really considered the idea that if you didn't publish a schematic, you were basically inviting people not to buy your product because they couldn't fix it.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Interesting.
There was only a time in the mid 80s after people started realizing that if you published the schematic, people would turn around and copy your design.
Right.
Then the people were like, well, maybe we ought not do that. And at the time, at early days, people who bought computing devices were people who were very highly skilled in electronics.
Okay.
At the tail end of the home computer space was when you had people that simply bought the machine and had no idea how to fix it. And so a schematic was not a selling point for them.
Right. It kind of transitioned.
Yep.
Interesting.
So anyway, that was that one, and then there's two more. Let me.
I like the way that design has the MPI switch split apart in for the hardware slots select and the ROM select.
Yeah,
so
that's true. You could start up with one cartridge set up for SCS capability and another completely different cartridge set up for as a ROM card.
And that's a nice feature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know where I would see that would be a benefit with how, like for instance, the hard disk controllers and the floppy drives worked, where you would want your what is it, the SCS line, which would be for the floppy. You'd want that and the floppy controller slot, but then you'd want your ROM, which was in your hard disk controller, being the primary startup. So I can see how that would be very useful.
Yep. So this one switches gears a little bit. This one is a dual position SIM connector. Like if you remember those ones that I think this one stood straight up and down.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yep. So you had the little clips right here at the top and the bottom on the one side that fit into the little holes, and then you had the connectors. And it looks to me like almost all the lines are connected directly together, which would make sense. And then there must be just one of the top lines. I'm not sure exactly where it is that's connected here, but there's probably nothing particularly interesting from a design perspective here, because SIM slots were set up to be, basically 8 or 16, in this case 16 bits, which is what you need for the CoCo 3. You need 16 bits of data, so a SIM matched up perfectly, and then the SIM was already duplexed address lines like a DRAM chip would be, and so you could just put those in here. I'm not sure where he sets whether which one's the high bank and which one's the low bank. I don't see that right here.
And what was this board? This is a memory expansion for the CoCo 3, like a 512K board?
This would have been a 512K expansion board.
Yep, a boring 512K expansion board.
Yeah, because it looks like I've got one similar to that was an earlier Cloud 9 model that had the two SIMs on it.
Yeah, this may have been a free version of that particular board.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would have taken two 128K SIMs, right? Because that would have been 256K of 8-bit, or no, they measured them in bytes, so it would have been 256K byte SIMs, two of them. And then that would have put you at 512K.
Good luck finding those these days, unfortunately.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's the thing I said in the chat earlier. I mean, this is a really cool design. Well, I mean, it's neat, but unfortunately, it's a little impractical now because you can't. You'd have to really.
It's just neat to look at because it is a small slice of history.
It is. So who wants Jim to design a 2 meg upgrade?
Yeah, that's cute. Already on that.
Nobody needs 2 megs. That's
right.
crazy.
2 megs is way too much. You only need 512.
I want 8.
Yeah, it's like Ed Snyder posting his thing about 16 megabytes.
I'd be happy if I could get a 2 meg upgrade board.
That's right.
Yeah, 8 would be 8. But the thing is, with the 8 meg upgrades, they require a lot of wiring into the main board. So the 2 megs were not so bad for that, as far as going and running wires all over the place.
Mm-hmm. So
just remember, 18 sectors per track is all you ever need to.
That's all you ever need.
This is the last design. This appears to be a daughter board that you could put in an MPI to upgrade it. So it puts the 74 LS10, which was part of those description or instructions that are available online to upgrade your MPI, so it's CoCo 3 compatible.
Okay.
This puts it on a little board with, I assume you screw it in somewhere, and then you've got some connections here, CoCo 2, CoCo 3, so you can turn it on or off depending on whether you are on a CoCo 2 or CoCo 3. And I'm assuming that the intention for this was you would take and put a switch here, right? And then you would have that switch exposed on the outside of the CoCo multi-pack. And then if you wanted to get into the FF80 and above lines on the on the MPI, then you would flip it to CoCo 2 mode, obviously only on a CoCo 2, and then on a CoCo 3 you would flip it to this CoCo 3 connection, and then you'd be safe for using it on a CoCo 3.
Go ahead. There's only like 2 devices actually that use that address space. So unless you had carts that were in the FF80 address range, you can pretty much, if you upgrade a multi-pack to CoCo 3 compatibility, you can happily use it on a CoCo 1 and CoCo 2, and 90% of your cartridges will happily work.
That's true. So this one looks like it's not quite done. I know he put a note here saying that this connection doesn't matter because it's connected via backplane. That's actually not true as far as I could tell, because the red wire right here slices off the ground plane on the top, and this blue wire right here slices off the ground plane on the bottom. And so the reason the line is here is saying I can't connect this ground anywhere, even though there is a ground plane. So there's a little more work that would be necessary on this. In reality, it's probably not that important, because it looks to me like these are all supposed to be like pigtail wires that you would take off of here and you would plug to other things. And so I think you only need one ground pigtail. So, because there's nothing else here that needs ground, it's just that one wire. So his note is incorrect, but the spirit of his note is correct, because I think you can still ignore it because you don't need to have that second ground wire connected.
Worst case scenario, you just run a jumper across to bridge the ground plane.
Yes, correct. I mean, it's not like it's insurmountable, but anyway, so that's what this
cool.
board does.
That's cool. Well, Jim, I'm glad you were able to make the call, and I also want to say too, I want to thank you for that last show you did with us when you showed off all your hardware stuff, and because I've been in the process of converting all our shows back to podcast format and listening to them, and I think that was episode 19 where we did the hardware stuff. It's probably one of my favorite episodes, because that's the one where I think I learned the most myself. So
good. No problem.
So thanks for doing that. I was saying earlier, I really appreciate everybody who comes together to do these calls, because we've all got our strengths and weaknesses and our contributions of our knowledges and experiences, and hardware is something that I find really interesting. And I apologize, I'm starting to really stuff up right now. I'm really coming down with something. So no, that's good stuff. And that was really interesting that just kind of a lot of things just seem to fall out of the sky sometimes in CoCo land. It's just like a plane flies over and some cargo just falls from the sky, and we get neat things. So
yep. And it sounds like Gene has more still coming. Did I gather that right? Like, this isn't all of it yet.
I sort of saw that was implied, I thought, from some of the messages, but who knows?
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see what else comes up.
Yeah, I don't know. The each one of the files has this little README from evidently John Turner Sr.
Okay.
Why my son was so fascinated with this stuff, I shall still endeavor to persevere and do my best to get around to uploading and releasing every single one of his files, designs, and whatnot, but it's probably going to take months to accomplish this. And this was written on the 25th, which would have been, what, yesterday?
Yes, yesterday.
Okay. So, but it's probably going to take months to accomplish this, so evidently there's more that needs to be sent to Gene. So I think Gene has uploaded everything he has, but it's not everything this guy.
Yeah, he mentioned he's got like a OneDrive, which is like a Dropbox. So I guess he's going to be dropping files into the guy's OneDrive, and as he gets them, he'll probably publish them and stuff. So
yeah, the only thing I don't understand from all this is the fact that in the email that was sent to the list, or that Gene forwarded the list, I think initially he said something like there was a girl and he's gone, and I think Ed and a bunch of other people kind of saw that as more of, he found some other interest in his life and he moved on. But the way these emails are, or not these emails, but these text messages saying, here I sit missing my son. That doesn't sound like somebody who's just... So I'm thinking when he said found a girl, that was one thing that happened, and so that's great. And then something happened to the son, and he's no longer around at all. So I think we may have misinterpreted the message from this guy.
Okay.
It sounds to me like this guy no longer is among the living.
No. Well, that would be
It's most unfortunate.
Most unfortunate, yeah.
He certainly left a legacy here for us to look at, and
and yeah, it's neat. It's definitely neat to look at. It's yeah, it looks like you're looking at the date that's going backwards now. This is going back to 2012.
Correct.
So,
and this is Little John, and I can't remember. Hopefully someday, yeah. This is the individual himself. Long road.
And he's got a list of some of the other projects on there we haven't seen yet either.
Yeah. Huh?
Several multi-pack
you're right.
replacements.
He's got
several multi-pack replacements. Several static RAM upgrades for all CoCo models. Multiple cartridges and EEPROMs.
MIDI interfaces.
Universal
hard drive
MIDI.
controllers. Yep.
Wow.
I didn't see it in that stuff that's been released. I didn't see any static RAM.
No,
Does that say HD floppy controller?
It does.
HD floppy controller, fully compatible with the original Tandy controller. Wow. MFM and SCSI interfaces, including drive emulators via flash cards.
Stereo recorders.
Wow. No cam replicas.
That one I'm familiar with.
Yeah. And hundreds of other designs. Wow.
There's a teaser.
That's going to be
one of the things that I think may need to happen is if you look at the top. So this is the last file in the list of what Gene sent, and you can see that I am having to admit this turning out far more tedious, time-consuming, flat-out boring than I expected. Then if you look at this, it says the contents of this archive were created by my son 5 years ago, and then it says, and thus I've done my best to prepare these files in a manner that will make them useful. I don't have much spare time. There's thousands of individual files. Let's see. This is not the one that I read this on, but evidently on the other one, if you look at the file and date stamp, now this is from the image or from the archive itself. You can see some of the files have older dates, but some of them have newer dates, and so my thought is this father is going around and taking the schematic and board files, and he is preparing all of these files, right? He's preparing all these files, and I think one of the things that we probably want to get back to Gene to get back to this guy is there's no need to do all that. All you need is this file, and people can create all the rest of this stuff. So this guy doesn't have to do any of this work. All he needs to do is because my concern is if he's finding this supremely tedious then he's probably going to quit before he's done, and then you'll never see these files, right?
Yeah. Or just send it all to somebody else who will do the work.
Correct. So there's no real need to do that, and I think somewhere I read in here that he is updating these text files with this little snippet on the top, right? Because this is their son. So and then he is one of them. I could have sworn I wrote or read that he was making all these little files, and so I think we just need to let this guy know that that's work that he absolutely does not need to do.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know how I got that, but anyway, that's what I've found.
Okay, well that's cool.
Anyway, there you go.
Thanks for sharing that with us and showing us, because it's something that's obviously plays well to see the design as opposed to just talking about it. Again, I know enough about I know nothing about electronics, but when I just see that picture and I see the little colors and I can almost connect the dots with my eyes of how this circuit path connects this thing to that thing, and these all make their way to the edge connector of the card that goes into the CoCo, it makes me feel like I have a slightly better comprehension of how electronics and circuits work, so it's kind of cool to see those things. Good stuff. All right, well, we're now at 5 o'clock Florida time, and I think my family's home from shopping, and I think we probably have some hungry people, so we'll probably wrap up this week's CoCoTALK. Does anybody else have anything they want to mention before we close out this week's show?
I see a serial ATA interface listed on there. That would be interesting.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the things that I would indicate is some of these designs, so, this is interesting, but probably not urgent. This is interesting, but probably not urgent. These are probably marginally interesting and not important. I would say that one's probably not all that important because it's not that hard to make a MIDI interface. This one right here sounds very interesting.
Hard drive floppy controller.
Barry's perspective of this serial ATA, that sounds extremely interesting because serial ATA is not something that you can typically do with a bunch of discrete logic. This one sounds very interesting. This one sounds interesting mainly because we're in the middle of right now of talking. I know earlier today we talked about stereo sound and or its sound and all that stuff and whatnot. And this one right here, the CoCo 1 and 2 upgrade with the junior banker board. And then I don't know what lower kit. Oh, that's the lowercase kit. Okay. So number 10 might be interesting. Number 11. So I think as we get down to the bottom, these ones up at the top up until like number 5, and then 5 and 6, and then maybe these last 4 or 5 here. If we had to prioritize this guy's pushing stuff out to us, I would say those things that are lower on the list are probably more important because they're more interesting. So to your point, Steve, what's interesting here? Those are the things that I think would be really interesting.
That's cool. That's cool. And hopefully more will come from this, and maybe we can get the right information back to make everybody's life easier in this process of porting this information out to the public. Very cool stuff. Very, very, very cool. Well, another great CoCo talk, I think, and I want to thank everybody who's still with us in the call, from Steve Bjork to David Ladd to Grant Leedy to Barry Nelson to Jim Brain, Mark Overholzer, Curtis Boyle, Nick Marentes, Karen Anscombe, and Rick Adams, and to everybody who was in the live chat. Steve Powell has been in the live chat. Grant was in the live chat. Davey Mitchell in the live chat. Luis Fernandez in the live chat. So thank you, everybody who watched today, or thank you, everybody who was part of our panel of speakers. And we did it. We did it. Yes. We pulled off another episode. 3 hours. Not bad, right? So good times, guys. So
hey,
we're going to... Yeah, Grant.
Steve has a plug he wants to do.
Oh, of course. Of course. Yes.
Well, actually, I do this thing called Haunt Hackers, which is I sell circuit boards where people can make their props talk and stuff like that. And if you're familiar with Nuts and Bolts magazine, their September issue for this year is going to feature my wee little talker as their cover article.
Neat.
Cool.
What's the website? I'll throw that out there again for everybody in the chat.
Haunt Hackers, that's plural, haunthackers.com.
Okay, I'm throwing that in the... Okay, maybe I need to put an HTTP in front of it. I don't know. Hackerswithans.com, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just threw that out there in the YouTube live chat.
Yeah, what they're doing is they're selling, in addition to having the article talking about building your own talking skull, they're also selling a skull too, using my board and like that. So kind of interesting, something that my friend Steve Koche was working on, and like that. He writes for the magazine.
Yeah, I think we pulled that up one time. One of the first times you joined us in a text-only chat, we pulled up the website and we saw the videos of the different skulls and the animatronics and the talking stuff. It is neat stuff. It really is. Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
Thank you.
Excellent. And John Strong's back. John Strong, we got to start the show all over again.
Well, I tried here on the iPhone. It just wasn't connecting through the computer earlier, so...
we can hear you. We can hear you, John. Loud and clear.
Well, okay. No, it's not my mic and stuff. We were having internet trouble here.
All right.
Well, since John is back, I'm going to go ahead and drop off so he can take care of everything now.
Well, hopefully Donald Trump didn't take down your internet too, like he did the archive. We can't have this kind of stuff going on. Good stuff, people. All right, thank you all. We're going to close out with some music, which is what I do now. I like to, make this a little bit more audio friendly. So I'm going to pick at completely random a CoCo musical track. Not sure what we're going to see, what we're going to hear, but this is what we're going to do to play it out. So this one's in the can. CoCoTALK episode 23. We're done. We're out of here. We'll see you guys next week. This will be available for replay probably in about a half hour or so on YouTube, and it'll be available in audio format in the near future. Check out everything related to CoCoTALK at CoCoTalk.live and give us some feedback and tell us what you liked, what you'd like to see, all that good stuff. Goodbye, everybody.
Later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Here we are.
outro music.
Actually, that was my mouse, but yeah.
It's a wrap.
Excellent.
It gets to be a little old for a second when it's in your ears and you can't hear yourself think. All right, cool. Well, we just finished the live stream, and we're done for another great show. And cool. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
You're welcome.
Hey, Mark.
And now
Later,
it's
Steve.
and David, I cannot thank you enough for all of your
What did I do
floppy for all of your floppy knowledge. The world's a better place.
I think the variety.
And thanks for helping the sleep-deprived people all around the world.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Curtis.
If you're running low on Ambien, we can always talk about floppy tracks and sectors.
Speaking of, I just wanted to point out the tech doc or the doc of the release stuff from John Turner. That HD, I don't think that means hard drive. I think it means high density.
That would make more sense.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking was HD for high density. I wasn't thinking hard or hard.
No, I was.
Ooh.
I got excited. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, well, I was getting excited because I would love to have high density floppy access.
Like, how many sectors per track could you fit on that?
37. I already know that because I went and did that back in the day.
Look, if you want to fit more bytes on a track, what you do is you actually have less sectors. Bigger ones, but less sectors.
Well, that was
Give less
on
overhead
OS
here.
68K, because on there, the OS 9 on there could understand, I think, what was up to 4K, 8K sector sizes.
I mean, all those programs I put out on floppy disks that people hated because they were quote-unquote copy protected. The main reason why I used the format that I did is I had faster loading and I could put more data on a track, which meant that in my production, when I reproduced the disks, I had to copy less tracks, which meant that I could produce the disks faster.
You actually had to do your own floppy generation for Tandy?
Oh, no. There was software I came out with on my own, like Z89 and stuff like that.
Line Rescue, etc. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So those, that was the real driving. Of course, I did have to put copy protection on there because if you could copy the floppy, everybody just copied it. And sales went down. I mean, it was... The CoCo had tremendous piracy.
Most of the platforms did. Apple's.
Yeah.
People didn't think twice. And it's like, I mean, just the other day I had to deal with somebody saying, well, the only reason why copy protection becomes illegal is when you profit from it. When you copy something and you profit from it. And And I said, does that mean that if you copy a DVD for your own use from somebody else's, that it's not illegal? And she goes, of course not. It's not illegal. I'm not selling it.
Yeah, that seems to be a shade of gray that favors the recipient there.
Exactly. But yeah, I just, as I said, somebody that's dealt most of his life making intellectual property and having to protect it. Piracy is an issue, and I've lost a lot of money because of it.
No doubt. It's it's to be respected. If you're trying to earn a living, somebody, and it's hampering your ability to generate revenue to pay your bills, then it's a problem. And not to forget the fact that it's legal or moral. Somebody's taking money out of somebody else's pocket.
Yeah. Well, like in Hot Hackers, none of the software that goes for my products is copy protected. It's actually released under Creative Commons. And so people can have at it, change it, modify it, and distribute it. The only thing is, I request that if they make changes, they put it out there in the community so everybody could benefit from it. Right. But I strictly make my money off the selling of the actual product.
Right, and let me just say something, because right now we're off the air, but I'm technically still recording, and so everything you're saying right now, if there's anything you don't want to have re-aired, let me know, because I respect that too.
I remember you mentioned you're doing buffer zones before and after the show.
Right. But I also want to just remind you, and since we're now talking about another topic, I wanted to respect your privacy and give you the option to, if we want to exclude any of that. So, cool.
Can I ask Steve a question? Steve Bjork. Steve, what was your development environment back in the 80s? You mentioned before you had a hard drive, and that was with OS 9, but is that what you used also for your RS-DOS products? Or
the original development was strictly a color computer, assembling the stuff and basically doing a save basically outputting the code into another CoCo that would actually execute it to test it. So you had one computer that had the stuff assembled. Now, the modifications I did immediately to the assembler that I had is give it disk I/O capability, and then I had enough room I could put in all the data statements in for the graphics. But yeah, it was pretty basic, trust me.
And you mentioned later you actually started doing cross-platform. What did you use at that point? Something custom, or?
Yeah, I used a graphics editor that I designed in DOS on the PC, and I used a cross-assembler, and then I would generate the modules, and then I would send it over to the CoCo and try it out there.
Right.
All right, guys, I'm going to jump off the call. I'm going to feed the call of the wild to feed the beast. Thank you, Steve, for joining us, and thank you, everybody else, as well. I really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing what the response is to the show. I think we had covered a lot in this show, from floppies to schematics.
It was a bit of a tech-heavy show today.
We left no stone unturned. Good times. You know what, David?
Yeah, I tend to go overboard. I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's. I'm not going to disagree with that statement.
All right,
variety.
guys.
I mean, Mark, I think, said it best. It is a variety show. You're going to have some weeks where you're going to be really tech-heavy because that's just where the conversation wanders. Other times we'll be doing really beginner stuff. Sometimes we'll be jumping back and forth.
Yeah,
that's kind of the fun of the show, is because you never know what you're going to get from week to week. It's not.
Yeah,
fixed.
It's a box of chocolates.
Once we get an index, you'll be able to skip through if there's something you're not so interested in. I like that on the CoCo crew, is that they have a little index and it's like, in that segment, I'll skip ahead to.
I think Mark's volunteering to make the index for you, Steve, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, yes. I'm not going to have time to do that, but that would be great to have a show notes. It'd be great too, because the podcast is an MP3. MP3 doesn't support tracks. It'd be great if you could break it into tracks and they could just hit next track on the playback and skip sections or rewind sections. But MP3s don't work that way. You have a forward and reverse, 30-second button, and that's about your only choice. So you got to kind of scrub through it to get to a timeline.
I'm fun to player. I use Winamp on Windows, and it has a drag bar, so you can drag through and see.
Right.
Almost every player on Windows has got that.
Right.
And Mac too. For that matter.
All right, guys. Yeah. I'm out of here. Thank you so much.
Okay. I got to head out too, so.
Talk to you all
Nice
later.
seeing you all. Thanks for dropping by, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Nice to meet Curtis.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
For joining us.
I'm off too. So
all right, good eye.
See you next week.